Chapter 404. Like Elder Peng, I would like to borrow the sacrificial flame altar of the fire sect. I hope sect master can make an exception for me, Xiaolingyu replied. Although Yi Xiaozi's face didn't look good, he could ignore a martial grandmaster like Elder Peng and even ignore the threat of an immortal venerable, but he couldn't ignore the favor his sect owed. No matter how big the world was, a favor was the most important. At this time, Yi Xiaozi's junior brothers were very depressed. They complained in their hearts that Yi Xiaozi shouldn't have refused Elder Peng's condition. He had just agreed to Elder Peng's condition and could get a fire divine weapon. Now, he still had to lend them the sacrificial flame altar, but it was only returning a favor. Yi Xiaozi's temperament determined that he couldn't refuse Xiaolingyu's request. Even though he was very unwilling, he could only nod his head heavily. Seeing this situation, Qing Xian was even more curious about Xiaolingyu and felt a little proud of him. Even a martial grandmaster with the threat of an immortal venerable couldn't settle the matter, but his junior brother Xiao had settled it with just a few words. Qing Xian didn't know why he felt very happy in his heart. The fire pool wasn't in the fire sect's encampment, but it wasn't very far from the fire sect's encampment. It only took them half an hour to reach the fire pool. The fire pool was actually a huge valley. The whole valley was filled with rolling flames and the surrounding mountains were burned red. The mountain rocks around the fire pool had been refined by the raging flames for many years and were of high quality, but no one dared to collect them. There was no entrance to this huge valley. If one wanted to enter it, they had to climb over the mountains. However, it wasn't difficult for the experts of the fire sect and Xiaolingyu's group to do so. In addition to the rolling flames in the fire pool, there were also many fire spirits that were born naturally. These fire spirits were very important to the fire sect. If a fire spirit was sealed in a high-level fire magic treasure, the quality and power of the magic treasure would increase a lot. Moreover, the magic treasure would have more spirituality. Some of the fire element sect's powerful cultivation methods also required the support of fire spirit. However, the fire pool had always been under the watch of the fire sect's experts, so it was difficult for it to nurture a powerful fire spirit. After all, there were too many disciples in the fire sect, and the fire sect's cultivators had too many fire-type magic treasures. If it weren't for the fire sect's intentional restraint and control, it was likely that as soon as a fire spirit was born in the fire pool, it would be immediately taken away by the fire sect's disciples. The closer they got to the center of the fire pool, the hotter the flames became. However, it didn't affect them at all. Although Xiaolingyu's cultivation was low, the quality of his body was high. Furthermore, he possessed the primal chaos primordial fire, which was comparable to the godly fire. There was no godly fire in this fire pool, so how could it hurt him? As for Elder Peng, even if he didn't have the divine fire, his late-stage immortal emperor realm cultivation base was enough to withstand the flames. Naturally, Qing Xian was the same. The experts from the fire sect were all experts at playing with fire. They often went in and out of the fire pool, so they were not afraid of the flames in the fire pool. In fact, they felt like they were fish in water or dragons in the sea. In the center of the fire pool, there was a high platform. The high platform was in the shape of a square with distinct edges and corners. It was about 3,000 meters tall and 300 meters wide. Its entire body was engraved with dense runes and patterns. In the midst of the raging flames, it seemed very quiet and special. This high platform was the sacrificial flame altar. Under Yi Xiaozi's lead, everyone flew to the top of the sacrificial flame altar. The top of the sacrificial flame altar was very flat. It was engraved with a hexagonal starlight pattern. In the center of the pattern, which was also the center of the sacrificial flame altar, was a hexagonal groove. It seemed like something needed to be filled. Since the three of you have decided to borrow the sacrificial flame altar, I'm naturally prepared. I'll now activate the sacrificial flame altar. The rest will be up to you. As Yi Xiao spoke, He took out a hexagonal crystal and filled it into the groove in the center of the altar. Then, Yi Xiao cast a seal at the crystal and chanted a few awkward incantations. After the sacrificial flame altar trembled slightly, Yi Xiao called out to his junior brothers and left together. Only Xiao Lingyu and the other two were left on the altar. Sister Qing Xian, in a while, the sacrificial flame altar will release a very strong aura. The surrounding flames will also madly rush over here. The two of us have no time to divert our attention, so we'll have to trouble you to protect us and block the aura released by the sacrificial flame altar and the surrounding flames. Elder Peng solemnly instructed. Don't worry, Qing Xian will do her best. Qing Xian nodded in response. Brother Xiao, in a while, the altar will release an invisible energy mass. The two of us will do our best to inject our flames into it. Our movements must be fast, and there can't be any stagnation or negligence. Elder Peng reminded Xiao Lingyu. Xiao Lingyu nodded silently, and her expression seemed to be nervous. After waiting for less than an hour, the sacrificial flame altar trembled even more violently. The hexagonal crystal under the three of them began to release a very powerful aura, as if it wanted to push the three of them away from the altar. The flames in the fire pool seemed to have been greatly stimulated. They rolled and roared as they rushed over. The momentum was very terrifying. Qing Xian forced herself to calm down. With a shout, her entire body released a cold and domineering aura. Not only did it stabilize the aura released by the sacrificial flame altar, but it also blocked the flames that were constantly rushing over. Before the sacrificial flame altar ends, Sister Qing Xian must hold on. Otherwise, the three of us will be in danger. Elder Peng couldn't help but remind her. Elder Peng, don't worry. I won't joke about your lives. Qing Xian said firmly. At this moment, the altar trembled even more violently. Not only did the aura released become stronger, but it also caused the flames in the fire pool to become more violent. An invisible energy mass slowly appeared above the three of them. Brother Xiao, it's starting! Elder Peng shouted. A wave of blue fire surged from his palm toward the invisible energy mass. Xiao Lingyu didn't hesitate. He immediately released his own primal chaos true fire above his head. As the primal chaos true fire and the blue divine fire collided, the invisible energy mass, the entire sacrificial flame altar, and even the entire fire pool began to tremble. Although the mighty momentum was covered by the surging flames, Qing Xian gradually began to feel strained. Sparkling and translucent beads of sweat had already seeped out of Qingshuan's forehead that was as smooth as jade, as well as her nose. Moreover, her teeth were tightly biting her red lips, and blood was already seeping out from the corners of her mouth. It could be seen how much pressure she was under. Xiao Lingyu and Elder Peng couldn't divert their attention to help Qing Xian. However, they were more anxious than Qing Xian. This was because their flames couldn't rush into the transparent energy mass from the beginning. The two of them continued to increase their strength. The transparent energy mass was gradually broken through. The blue divine fire and primal chaos true fire slowly poured into it. What are they doing? An expert from the fire sect near the sacrificial flame altar asked. I thought that old man was going to refine his own divine fire. I didn't expect him to want to fuse the two powerful flames together. Although Yi Xiaozi was a careless person, his eyesight wasn't bad. If that's the case, his strength will probably be even more powerful, Yi Xiaozi said. That's not necessarily true. They're using the sacrificial flame altar to fuse the two powerful flames. However, with that old man's body, he won't be able to put it away. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for him to refine it, Yi Xiaozi said as he shook his head. Then why are they fusing the two flames together? If they can't control it, it might backfire, Yi Xiaozi said in confusion. Only they know. However, even if they're using the sacrificial flame altar, it's still very dangerous to fuse the two divine fires. The sacrificial flame altar's resistance isn't very easy to resist, Yi Xiaozi said in a pessimistic tone. The truth was just as Yi Xiaozi said. As the primal chaos true fire and the blue divine fire continued to invade, the transparent energy mass struggled more and more violently. This also caused the sacrificial flame altar and the entire pool of fire to counterattack. Although Qing Xian was rather powerful, she was only one person after all. She already felt that she couldn't hold on much longer. Qing Xian knew that she had to hold on. Otherwise, not only would all her previous efforts be wasted, the transparent energy mass would also explode. The transparent energy mass itself would contain the power of the two high-grade flames. It would counterattack with the sacrificial flame altar and the pool of fire at the same time. The three of them would probably die here in an instant. Should we go over and help? Yi Xiaozi asked. We can't. We're all fire-attributed cultivators. If we go over, we'll only be of more help. Our fire-attributed energy will also be summoned by the sacrificial flame altar and attack the three of them together. Yi Xiaozi shook his head and said. If they could really help, Yi Xiaozi wouldn't mind doing so. Although he hated Elder Pring, he wasn't a vicious person. He wouldn't watch the three of them die on the altar. They should find more experts, Yi Xiaozi said again. You don't know much about the sacrificial flame altar. You don't know that the more people there are, the stronger the counterattack of the sacrificial flame altar. It's not something that can be done with more people. Yi Xiaozi shook his head and said with a smile. Isn't that old man able to invite an immortal sovereign? Yi Xiaozi asked again. The stronger the cultivation of the person who goes up, the stronger the counterattack of the sacrificial flame altar will be. Before Yi Xiaozi could answer, an expert from the fire sect had already spoken. That woman should be at the peak of the late-stage immortal emperor realm. She's actually the most suitable person to go up. Let's see if she can withstand it, Yi Xiaozi added. Regardless of whether she could withstand it or not, Qing Xian had to persist even though she had already spat out mouthfuls of blood and her face was as pale as paper. Elder Peng and Xiaolingyu also knew that Qing Xian was under too much pressure. The two of them were anxious and could only try their best to pour their divine flames or primal chaos primordial fire into the transparent energy ball. After another 10 minutes, Elder Peng's divine flame and Xiaolingyu's primal chaos primordial fire were all poured into the transparent energy ball. However, the fusion of the two divine flames wasn't over yet. Elder Peng had to retrieve his blood essence and soul essence that he had left in his divine flame, while Xiaolingyu had to continue pouring her blood essence and soul essence into the transparent energy ball. Chapter 405. Qing Xian also knew that this was a critical moment, but the pressure on her was too great. Even though she tried her best to release her aura and circulated her power at the maximum speed, she still felt like a withered leaf in a gale that could wither away at any time. Sensing that the boundless aura was slowly approaching her, Qing Xian took out her divine sword and crazily poured her power into the divine sword. With the support of Qing Xian's power, the divine sword trembled continuously and released waves of domineering and powerful aura fluctuations, suppressing the other auras. However, the divine sword was a divine weapon after all, and Qing Xian did not have any divine power in her body. Even though she was a late-stage immortal emperor and her power was very strong, she knew that she could not hold on for too long. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Qing Xian's power had been completely exhausted. The divine sword's luster began to dim, and the waves of sword aura also began to weaken. Although Xiaolingyu and Elder Peng had already reached the end, they were still one step away. Qing Xian, you must hold on for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Elder Peng seemed to have seen through Qing Xian's condition, but he still reminded her. Qing Xian smiled bitterly, but then she clenched her teeth and began to burn her life essence to maintain the output of her power. The divine sword's radiance rose again, and the sword aura it released suppressed all the aura fluctuations in the surroundings once again. She's forcing herself. Even if she can hold on until the end, I'm afraid that half of her cultivation will be destroyed. It's a pity that she's a late-stage immortal emperor with excellent aptitude. She should have been able to advance to the immortal venerable realm. Yixiaozi watched from afar and secretly felt that it was not worth it for Qing Xian. Xiao Lingyu and Qing Xian did not know that Qing Xian would have to sacrifice herself to ensure the completion of the sacrificial flame. Otherwise, Xiao Lingyu would definitely not agree, and Qing Xian might not be willing to sacrifice herself. As for whether or not Elder Peng was aware of this, no one knew. However, the sacrificial flame had already reached this stage. It could be said that there was no turning back. Xiao Lingyu and Qing Xian could only brace themselves and continue. If they stopped midway, no one would be able to save their lives. Xiao Lingyu occasionally glanced at Qing Xian. He saw that Qing Xian's weak body was releasing such powerful energy to resist the boundless pressure, and Qing Xian's delicate body was constantly trembling blood, and her face was pale. He could not help but feel sorry for her. After all, Xiao Lingyu was the one who would benefit the most from this sacrificial flame. If Qing Xian sacrificed herself, it would naturally be counted on Xiao Lingyu's head. 10 minutes passed in the blink of an eye, but for the 3 people on the stage, it was incomparably long. Almost every moment, Qing Xian was losing a large amount of life essence to maintain the power of the divine sword. If Qing Xian was not a late-stage immortal emperor expert, all her energy would have been sucked away by the divine sword in a few breaths' time. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Qing Xian felt dizzy. She had lost too much of her life essence, which made it hard for her to maintain her soul and body. She said in her heart, "I've tried my best," and then fell on the stage. Qing Xian's somewhat slender divine sword also dimmed. It held on for another 2 breaths' time in the air before it fell on the stage with a clang. At this moment, Elder Peng had coincidentally completely severed his connection with the divine flame. He shouted loudly and released his aura, helping Qing Xian resist the surrounding pressure. Xiao Lingyu's task was not yet complete. He still needed to continuously pour his life essence and soul into the transparent ball of energy that was completely occupied by the 2 high-level flames. Fortunately, he had stored a large amount of blood crystals in his body. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to continue. Elder Peng's strength was about the same as Qing Xian's. Naturally, he could resist the boundless pressure for a period of time. However, as he resisted, he also used his mind to take out a milky white pill and sent it into Qing Xian's mouth. After sending the pill into Qing Xian's mouth, Elder Peng took out a piece of white silk and wrapped it around Qing Xian's body. Qing Xian's consciousness was muddled. She could not control her body and soul on her own. However, the white silk could temporarily seal her entire body. By the time Elder Peng could not hold on any longer, the 2 flames had already intertwined with each other, constantly invading and fusing with each other. Now that they had stopped accepting Xiao Lingyu's blood soul, Xiao Lingyu's mission had been completed. Due to the severe loss, when he retracted his palm, his body involuntarily swayed, and his head felt a little dizzy. Even so, he did not feed himself any medicinal pills to recuperate. Instead, he pounced in front of Qing Xian without a second thought. "Brother Xiao, don't worry. She's fine for now," Elder Peng reminded him. "Then," he said, "quickly take out that hexagonal crystal." Xiao Lingyu's expression was a little flustered. His hands were trembling, not because of himself, but because he was worried about Qing Xian's situation. He crawled to the center of the altar and inserted his fingers into the edge of the groove. With a sudden force, he easily pulled out the hexagonal crystal. Perhaps he used too much strength, or perhaps he was too flustered. Xiao Lingyu held the hexagonal crystal with both hands and rolled a few times before stabilizing himself. Then, he crawled to Qing Xian's side. The reason he was in such a sorry state was because he was worried about Qing Xian. If Qing Xian had an accident because of this, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. It was not that Xiao Lingyu was soft-hearted. After all, Qing Xian was doing this to help him. He was not a heartless fool. After the hexagonal crystal left the groove, the altar stopped trembling. The flames in the fire pool stopped rolling and roaring, and the boundless pressure disappeared. The center of the fire pool regained its calm. Only the energy of the high-level flames above the altar was still trembling slightly. Brother Xiao, with your fire control skills, try to inject some seals into it to speed up the fusion of the two flames with your blood soul. Elder Pring patted Xiaolingyu's shoulder and said, I'll take care of things here. Qing Xian will be fine. Xiaolingyu's hands were still trembling, and his breathing was a little chaotic. Elder Pring frowned and said, Brother Xiao, it's the last moment now. You can't lose your mind because of love. You have to calm down. Elder Peng's voice was like a morning bell ringing in Xiaolingyu's ears. He could not help but feel refreshed, and his eyes gradually became clear. Xiaolingyu stood up again, took a deep breath, and began to form seals with his hands. Group after group of seals were formed between Xiaolingyu's fingers, and were then injected into the air. At this time, several experts of the fire sect also flew over. Yixiaozi put away the hexagonal crystal beside Qing Xian and said, Old man, you're actually willing to give away the divine fire to someone else. It's really puzzling. Elder Peng was also a little weak. He smiled and said, Could it be that many people in the immortal world say that I'm a stingy person? Yixiaozi shook his head repeatedly and said, No, but this divine flame is like your life to a supreme grandmaster in equipment refinement like you. I'm truly unable to imagine exactly what benefits fellow Taoist Xiao gave you to make you be so generous. Elder Peng said, This has nothing to do with a red-headed ghost like you. Perhaps it was because Yixiaozi had refused Elder Peng with a strong attitude, so Elder Peng did not treat Yixiaozi well. I'm just a little regretful that the only Grandmaster Artificer in the immortal world is gone just like that. What will an old man like you use to invite an immortal sovereign in the future? Yixiaozi said with a strange tone. You'd better watch over the fire source continent. Don't let someone steal the divine fire from under your nose again. Elder Peng retorted. In fact, neither Yixiaozi nor Elder Peng were evil people. It was just that the two of them were not on the right path because of what happened in the past. Is she all right? She was a little too desperate just now. Yixiaozi didn't want Elder Peng and Yixiaozi to continue arguing, so he changed the topic. Her life is definitely not in danger, but even if she recovers in the future, not only will her cultivation drop a lot, she will never be able to reach the immortal sovereign stage, let alone transcend the divine tribulation and ascend to the God realm. Before Elder Peng could finish speaking, Yixiaozi spoke once more. Humph, that's just because you don't know. Elder Peng replied with a cold snort. Yixiaozi was a straightforward person. It was not that he had the intention to laugh, but that he had a one-track mind and said whatever he thought of. Then tell me, do you have any way to reverse the situation, so that she can still cultivate like before in the future? Yixiaozi asked, unconvinced. As long as we find a divine-grade material with ice attribute, we can stabilize her body and immortal nascent soul, and gradually recover her lost life essence. With the help of the divine-grade material in her body, she can naturally advance to the immortal sovereign stage. Elder Peng said after thinking for a while. This is only a theoretical possibility. Even if you stabilize her body and immortal nascent soul, how can you make her soul safe? Yixiaozi shrugged and asked. For the characteristics of her soul, refine a divine-grade spirit congealing pill. Elder Peng replied. Refine a divine pill? I remember that Great Grandmaster Peng is a refining Great Grandmaster, not an alchemy Great Grandmaster. Yixiaozi seemed to respond strangely, then patted his head and said, By the way, Great Grandmaster Peng can go to that old man Mao Zhen. He is an alchemy Great Grandmaster, but I heard that Mao Zhen seems to have a bad relationship with you. If you go to him, it will probably be harder than coming to me. Indeed, almost all the top powerhouses in the immortal world knew that Elder Pring and Elder Mao did not have a good relationship. After all, they were both great grandmasters, proud people, and people who lived by their skills. Naturally, no one would admit defeat, and it was inevitable that sometimes they would be at loggerheads. Chapter 406. While Elder Pring and Yi Xiaozi were bickering, Xiao Lingyu had already cast many seals of the fire control technique. He had mastered into the ball of energy that was completely occupied by the two high-level flames. Xiao Lingyu's blood soul was accelerating the fusion of the two flames. The originally transparent ball of energy was truly miraculous. Not only could it trap the two high-level flames, but it could also make them fuse with each other. A new high-level flame was gradually forming. Without the support of the sacrificial flame altar, the transparent ball of energy's power was gradually being depleted, and the sacrificial flame had actually reached the end. An hour later, Xiao Lingyu's seals had yet to stop, but a purplish-black flame had already formed and was floating steadily in the air. The transparent ball of energy had already disappeared, and Xiao Lingyu could clearly feel that he had a very close mental connection with the purplish-black flame that had just formed. Too many of Xiao Lingyu's blood souls had been integrated into the purplish-black flame, and it was like a part of Xiao Lingyu's body. He could control it without any hindrance. In fact, it was fortunate that Xiao Lingyu's blood souls were special and high-grade. Otherwise, not only would it be difficult for the new flame to accept them, but it would also be burned into nothingness in a few moments when it was poured into it. It was also because of Xiao Lingyu's high-grade bloodline that he could suppress part of the purplish-black flame's power with his bloodline and control it at will. Of course, this also required the use of fire control technique. Under the control of Xiao Lingyu's fire manipulation technique, the purple-black flames circled in the air from time to time. Sometimes they danced in the air, sometimes they turned into a fire snake, and sometimes they turned into a fire arrow. Even the masters of the fire element sect were dumbfounded. The new divine flame had just formed, and this kid could actually control it like this. Next, with a thought from Xiao Lingyu, the purplish-black flame's power was immediately reduced by more than half. Then, it fell into Xiao Lingyu's palm and finally sank into Xiao Lingyu's body. With the suppression of the high-quality bloodline, the purplish-black flames were unable to pose much of a threat to Xiao Lingyu's body. At this moment, they were quietly floating in Xiao Lingyu's dantian. Xiao Lingyu practiced fire control, and so did his nascent soul of chaos. After the purplish-black flame entered his dantian, Xiao Lingyu's nascent soul of chaos constantly performed fire control seals with its tiny hands to deepen its familiarity and control of the purplish-black flame. He accepted it so easily? Little Master Yi Xiao had been stunned when he saw Xiao Lingyu control the purple-black flames, and now he was even more astonished. The other experts of the fire sect were even more dumbfounded. They didn't know that Xiao Lingyu's bloodline was very strong, nor did they see that Xiao Lingyu's physical quality was very high. Even Elder Peng, who had been prepared for this, felt that everything had gone too smoothly in the end. After the primordial fire of chaos merged with the blue divine fire, its power had increased tremendously. It could probably melt a low-grade divine weapon now, but it would not bring any improvement to Xiao Lingyu's power and cultivation level. How much longer can she last? Xiao Lingyu ignored everyone's astonished gazes. He directly returned to Qing Xian's side and asked with concern. Xiao Lingyu had clearly heard the conversation between Elder Peng and Little Master Yi Xiao. "She'll be fine for 1,000 years, Elder Peng replied truthfully. "Only 1,000 years?" Xiao Lingyu frowned slightly at first, and then he took out a high-grade jade box and opened it. He said, "This should be a divine treasure of ice. Elder Peng, take a look and see if it'll be useful to her." Elder Peng glanced at it, and then his face changed slightly. He said, "It's actually a divine treasure of ice. Of course it'll be useful. Moreover, it'll be a superb divine treasure to save her. As long as it's useful." Xiao Lingyu first nodded, and then he said, Let's go ask Grandmaster Mao Jun for help. Alright. I know where he is right now. Elder Pring knew that Qing Xian was in a critical situation that couldn't be delayed, so he didn't hesitate and said, "Hold her in your arms for now. Don't expose any part of her body. We'll set out right now, and we'll be able to find him in 500 or 600 years at most." Xiao Lingyu embraced Qing Xian's delicate figure that was wrapped in white silk cloth tightly in his arms, and then he said to Yi Xiao Zi and the other experts of the fire sect, "Thank you for your help. Farewell." Before Yi Xiao Zi and the others could reply, Xiao Lingyu had already flown out of the fiery pool with Elder Peng, and they rushed towards the teleportation formation on Firesource Continent at full speed. Another top expert is about to be born in the immortal dimension. He's so young yet has actually obtained such fortune. He'll surely attain great heights in the future. Yi Xiao Zi looked at the direction Xiao Lingyu vanished towards and sighed with emotion. Just as Elder Peng had said, they'd already arrived at a continent called the Fragrance Continent in a little over 550 years. The only alchemy grandmaster in the immortal dimension, Mao Jun, was stationed on the Fragrance Continent all year round because there were many precious medicinal herbs on the continent. It was precisely because there were many precious medicinal herbs, and those medicinal herbs emitted a rich fragrance, that the Fragrance Continent got its name. Under normal circumstances, there were many cultivators in the immortal dimension. Wherever there were more heavenly treasures, it would attract many immortals to plunder them. However, the Fragrance Continent was different. It had always been under the control of a sect called the Wondrous Pill Sect, and outsiders were not allowed to casually enter the areas that were rich in high-quality medicinal herbs. The Wondrous Pill Sect's overall strength wasn't strong, and there weren't many disciples in the entire sect. However, this sect had been passed down since ancient times, and there had always been at least one alchemy grandmaster. It was precisely because there had always been an alchemy grandmaster in the Wondrous Pill sect that no one dared to behave atrociously on the Fragrance Continent. Immortal Venerables didn't have to fear the Wondrous Pill sect, but Immortal Venerables had to ask the alchemy grandmaster for help. After all, Immortal Venerables had to face the divine tribulation in the future, and they needed the alchemy grandmaster to provide them with divine pills. Only divine pills were effective in healing their injuries, recovery, and cultivation. It could be said that alchemy grandmasters had more face in front of Immortal Venerables than alchemy grandmasters. Immortal Venerables didn't lack divine tools, but divine pills were consumables. Even if Immortal Venerables didn't lack them now, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't need them in the future. Since Immortal Venerables gave face to the alchemy grandmaster, they would naturally help the Wondrous Pill sect maintain the order of the Fragrance Continent. Therefore, ordinary immortals and those big and small forces in the immortal dimension didn't dare to rashly set foot on the Fragrance Continent. It could be said that among the continents in the immortal dimension that had been discovered by immortals, the Fragrance Continent was the one that maintained its original appearance the best. It was also because of this that there were many unknown or unexplored places on the Fragrance Continent. Moreover, there was no lack of danger. Even the Wondrous Pill sect, which had been entrenched on the Fragrance Continent for countless years, didn't dare to say that they knew the entire Fragrance Continent like the back of their hand. Elder Peng had made a trip to the Fragrance Continent in the past, but not to search for high-grade medicinal herbs, but to exchange insights and experience with the current alchemy grandmaster of the Wondrous Pill sect, Mao Jun. Unfortunately, the two had a big disagreement at that time and refused to accept each other. In the end, they quarreled until their faces turned red, and they parted on bad terms. Since that quarrel, there were rumors in the immortal dimension that alchemy grandmaster Mao Jun and alchemy grandmaster Pring Jia were at odds and had a deep conflict. The rumors also affected the two grandmasters. After all, when the rumors spread, there were bound to be people who would add oil and vinegar to the fire, causing the grudge between the two grandmasters to deepen. Sometimes the two would even ridicule each other. The conflict simply couldn't be resolved. If Qing Xian wasn't in a critical situation and only Mao Zhen could save him, Elder Peng wouldn't have come to ask Mao Zhen for help. Having been to the Fragrance Continent and having a conversation with Mao Zhen, Elder Peng naturally knew the location of the wondrous pill sect. After exiting the teleportation array, he first glanced at the direction and then took the lead to fly away. That Mao Zhen won't refuse us, right? Xiaolingyu asked worriedly as she followed Elder Peng. If I ask him for help, he'll most likely ridicule me and refuse, Elder Peng said. Then what if I ask him for help? Xiaolingyu asked again. He'll agree, but he'll raise some conditions as usual. For example, he'll make you agree to help the Wondrous Pill sect maintain their absolute control over the Fragrance Continent or ask for a large sum of immortal crystals from you. In any case, every time he helps someone refine a divine pill, he'll raise more than one condition, and most of them aren't simple, Elder Peng replied according to his understanding. As long as he doesn't flatly refuse, it'll be fine, Xiaolingyu said with a firm expression. The two of them were extremely fast, and it took them less than an hour to arrive at the entrance of the Wondrous Pill sect. The Wondrous Pill sect was located in a valley, and there were no defenses around the valley at all. There were only two boys with lazy expressions standing guard at the entrance of the valley. The two boys had fair skin, bright red mouths, and two small braids, making them look like porcelain dolls. Seeing Xiaolingyu and Elder Peng arrive, the two boys put away their playful expressions and respectfully bowed first. Then, one of them asked, "May I know the purpose of the two seniors' visit?" Xiaolingyu stepped forward and replied, "We wish to see your sect's great Grandmaster Mao. Grandmaster has been in seclusion recently, so it's inconvenient for him to meet guests. May I know if the two seniors have an invitation from Grandmaster?" The immortal child asked very politely. "We have an urgent matter to discuss with Grandmaster, so please inform him," Xiaolingyu replied as he stuffed two storage pouches filled with immortal crystals into the hands of the two immortal children. The two immortal children first looked at the storage pouches, then looked at each other with a joyful expression. One of them said, "Grandmaster is in seclusion, so the two of us don't dare to disturb him. However, we can ask the other seniors first." "Then we'll have to trouble you, immortal child," Xiaolingyu said. It didn't take long for the immortal child to return with a middle-aged cultivator. "So it's Elder Peng who has graced us with your presence. It's our fault for not being able to greet you." The middle-aged cultivator's expression changed slightly after seeing Elder Peng. He then cupped his fists and spoke in a seemingly respectful manner. "Haha, it's fine. I'm only accompanying Brother Xiao here to show him the way." Elder Peng smiled warmly. "Then I wonder if this is—" The middle-aged cultivator glanced at Xiaolingyu, but he couldn't see through Xiaolingyu's depth. He also didn't know how to address him. After a pause, he asked, "Fellow Taoist, why are you looking for my master?" Chapter 407. The person looked very troubled and said, "My master is in seclusion. We're urgently waiting for Grandmaster Mao to save us. We really can't afford any delays," Xiaolingyu said earnestly. The person had already seen Xiaolingyu holding someone in his arms. Now that he heard Xiaolingyu's words, he understood. However, he still looked troubled. "I've heard of Grandmaster Mao's benevolence. You wouldn't leave us in the lurch, right?" Xiaolingyu continued. "Of course I wouldn't leave you in the lurch. However, my master's seclusion this time is very important. Before he went into seclusion, he instructed us not to knock on his door unless the Wondrous Pill sect is facing a calamity," the person said helplessly. "I know I came here abruptly, and I don't want to disturb the great Grandmaster's closed-door practice. However, I have no other choice. Please let the great Grandmaster know. I will accept any conditions the great Grandmaster has and do my best to fulfill them," Xiaolingyu said sincerely. "This old man can vouch for you as well," Elder Peng agreed. "That won't do. As my master's disciple, I don't dare to disobey my master's orders. Please return. Perhaps there's another way." The person shook his head. Please let me know first, Xiao Yu insisted with a pleading expression. Mao Zhen was the only alchemy grandmaster in the entire immortal world who could refine divine pills. Who else could Xiao Yu ask for help? What other way could he come up with? The two of you, please return. Who would have thought that after the person said that, he would shake his fist and turn around to leave? Sigh. Elder Peng could only sigh. However, Xiao Yu's expression darkened. After a cold snort, he took a step forward with Qing Xian in his arms. Senior, please wait. One of the children hurriedly stopped him. However, Xiao Yu turned a deaf ear to him. He took another step forward and entered the valley. The person who had greeted Qin Nan previously turned around and said, "What are you trying to do? This is the wonderful pill sect. You better not barge in, or else." Before the person could finish speaking, Xiao Yu's hand had already wrapped around his neck. A wave of chaos magic directly poured into the person's body, instantly imprisoning him. So what if it's the wondrous pill sect? I'm not afraid even if I have to go against the entire immortal world, let alone a mere wondrous pill school. Xiao Yu laughed coldly and continued, "Bring me to the place where Grandmaster Mao is in closed-door seclusion. Otherwise, die." In fact, Elder Peng was also very angry. Although he felt that it was a little inappropriate to see Xiao Yu flipping out at this moment and it might cause a lot of trouble, he did not stop her or persuade her. The person's face turned red from Xiao Yu's choking. He was also an early-stage Immortal Emperor expert. Earlier, he did not expect Xiao Yu to dare to attack him. Moreover, he did not expect Xiao Yu to be able to imprison his cultivation in an instant. At this moment, his eyes were wide open. Seeing how agitated Xiao Yu was, he was afraid and nodded repeatedly. Xiao Yu's expression was grave and stern as he released his hand. However, he did not release the person and only let him lead the way. After a few steps, a few more cultivators from the wondrous pill sect surrounded them. However, most of them were below the Immortal Emperor stage. There were not many disciples in the wondrous pill sect. This was because their requirements for recruiting disciples were very strict. They had to have the aptitude to become an alchemy grandmaster or grandmaster before they could join. The entire valley was very empty. After such a big commotion, only a few disciples of the wondrous pill sect had rushed over. Moreover, no one dared to make a move. The cultivator who was imprisoned by Xiao Yu did not dare to stop. He slowly walked forward and at the same time, he signaled to his fellow sect members with his eyes. After moving forward for a short distance, a white-haired old man who looked a little old blocked the way. "Let him go," the white-haired old man said with a dignified expression. Moreover, his voice carried an extremely powerful soul fluctuation, causing Elder Peng to frown slightly. The white-haired old man's cultivation was very high and his attainments in the soul were quite profound. Unfortunately, his soul sound wave attack was not very effective against Xiao Yu. This was because the sound wave attack was directed at Xiao Yu's sea of consciousness and was immediately absorbed by the grayish-black metal piece in his sea of consciousness. "Call Grandmaster Mao out and I'll let him go," Xiao Yu said calmly. "If you don't want to be hunted down by the immortal world's celestial sovereigns, it's better for you to let him go first," the white-haired old man said without backing down. "Humph. Don't use the celestial sovereigns to scare me. To tell you the truth, even a celestial sovereign can't do anything to me," Xiao Yu replied coldly. Then, a purplish-black flame appeared in the palm of his hand. He continued, "If Grandmaster Mao doesn't come out in 10 minutes, I'll turn him into ashes first." As soon as the purplish-black flame appeared, it caused the space to fluctuate violently. Fine spatial cracks had already appeared. The white-haired old man's expression changed greatly. This was because he, who had an extremely high soul realm, could see that the purplish-black flame was very powerful. It was even stronger than ordinary divine flames. At this moment, it was only suppressed and did not erupt with too much power. In the immortal world, there were very few experts who could control such a powerful flame at will. It was reasonable for the white-haired old man to be moved. Pring-yi, what is the meaning of this? Seeing that his threat to Xiaolingyu was ineffective, the white-haired old man questioned Elder Pring. Nothing. It's just that Grandmaster Mao is too arrogant and too difficult to invite, so we have no other choice. Elder Pring sneered. Do you still expect Senior Brother Mao to come out and help you? The white-haired old man asked. If we don't do this, we won't even see Grandmaster Mao's face. Xiaolingyu continued. Fellow Taoist, let him go first. If there's anything, we can talk about it. Using force won't solve the problem. The white-haired old man was no longer as dignified as before. I'll say it again. Ask Grandmaster Mao to come out and I'll let him go. Xiaolingyu insisted. The white-haired old man's expression changed again and again. Finally, he said, Okay, I'll ask Senior Brother Mao to come out. Go and come back quickly. My patience is not very good. Xiaolingyu replied indifferently. The white-haired old man did not delay and immediately turned to leave. After a full hour, seeing that Xiaolingyu's patience was about to be worn out, the white-haired old man came over with a skinny old man. The old man's face was withered and his back was slightly hunched. He was supporting himself with a dragon-headed walking stick. At this moment, his face was malicious. Pringbai, you captured my disciple to threaten me. This is not the demeanor of a grandmaster. The skinny old man stood still and said calmly, Mao Zhen, don't pretend. Those demeanors are for the world to see. Everyone is not much different from ordinary immortals except for some special method. Why do you have to pretend to be an otherworldly expert? Elder Ping said calmly, Fellow Taoist, let my disciple go. I can help you refine the divine pill, but you have to agree to the conditions. Also, you have to prepare the materials yourself. Mao Zhen was still very calm. Xiaolingyu's heart moved. He withdrew his chaotic demonic power from the early stage immortal emperor and said, What conditions does Elder Mao have? A devil Dao cultivator? Mao Zhen frowned when he felt the aura of the chaotic demonic power. However, he did not delve into it. He only felt that it was a little strange that someone in the immortal world could cultivate the devil Dao to such a high level. First condition, you have to be like other immortal world experts. You have to acknowledge and help maintain the control of our wondrous pill sect over the fragrance continent. Second condition, this old man's cultivation was interrupted by fellow Taoist and was forced to come out of seclusion. Fellow Taoist, you have to compensate me with a divine tool or 10,000 divine stones. Third condition, go to the Myriad Bat Cave and bring back a King Bodhi pill. Mao Zhen didn't even need to think before stating the three conditions. The first condition was actually something that could be done with just a few words. However, the other two conditions were not easy to fulfill. Mao Zhen, don't go too far. You're just helping me refine a divine pill, yet you want a finished divine artifact. You even want a King Bodhi that you don't even know if it exists. Aren't you opening your lion's mouth a little too big? Elder Peng replied with a little anger. Hee, I didn't beg you to come. If you think the conditions are too harsh, you can find someone else. Mao Zhen laughed fearlessly. Elder Mao, can you confirm whether the King Bodhi pill really exists in the Myriad Bat Cave? Xiaolingyu asked after a moment of silence. Yes. Mao Zhen nodded. Good, I agree to all three conditions. Xiaolingyu nodded solemnly. He then took out the transparent scimitar that he had obtained from great thief Nie Yu and said, This is a divine tool. As for the King Bodhi pill, I will go to the Myriad Bat Cave to look for it later. Elder Ping wanted to say something, but he did not know what to say. He could only shake his head helplessly. Mao Zhen directly took the scimitar from Xiaolingyu's hand. After looking at it for a while, he said with satisfaction, Not bad. Although it is a low-grade divine tool, it has some special effect. Then, Mao Zhen gave the scimitar to the early stage, immortal emperor disciple in front of everyone. It has always been me who snatches other people's treasures. Today I will leave this scimitar here. In the future, I will make you pay me back double. Xiaolingyu was naturally unhappy that he had been taken advantage of. However, he needed Mao Zhen's cooperation in order to save Qingxian, so he still had to endure it. If you head southeast, you'll find the Myriad Bat Cave in about 5 million kilometers. What I want to remind you is that the Myriad Bat Cave is extremely dangerous. You must be careful. Mao Zhen pretended to remind him. Xiaolingyu handed Qingxian to Elder Peng and said, "Help me take care of her." Elder Peng had originally wanted to tag along, but he no longer had his divine flame. His identity as a great Grandmaster Artificer was of no use in the face of danger. Moreover, it was impossible for him to bring Qingxian along, and it was also impossible for him to leave Qingxian behind by herself. He could only nod and say, "Brother Xiao, don't worry." Xiaolingyu looked at Qingxian again. Then, he jumped up and went to the Myriad Bat Cave alone. "Mao Zhen, let's take a look at her situation first. What materials are needed to refine a spirit-congealing pill for her soul characteristics?" After Xiaolingyu left, Elder Peng opened a hole in the white silk wrapped around Qingxian and said to Mao Zhen. Chapter 408. After flying at full speed for close to a day, Xiaolingyu was only 5 million miles away from the wondrous pill sect. He saw a huge river in front of him. This river was tens of thousands of feet wide. The water flowed rapidly, and there were steep cliffs on both sides of the river. He flew to the other side. Before he reached the other side, he saw many small caves on the cliff in front of him. Moreover, there were many black bat-like demonic beasts of different sizes going in and out of those small caves. It was obvious that Xiaolingyu had already reached the 10,000 bat cave. The Bodhi King he was looking for was inside. This Bodhi King was definitely not easy to find. Otherwise, Mao Zhen would have come to retrieve him himself. Even an expert like Mao Zhen would not easily enter the 10,000 bat cave. That was why he had asked someone else to retrieve him. Xiaolingyu knew that this trip would be dangerous. However, he was not worried about himself. After all, he had the protection of his spiritual abode and the invisibility cloak that he had refined for a long time. Teleporting from the East Imperial Continent to the Fiery Source Continent and then from the Fiery Source Continent to the Waft Fragrance Continent took a long time. During this time, Xiaolingyu had been refining the invisibility cloak with the Chaos Demonic Nascent Soul. This was especially so after he obtained the purplish-black primordial chaos fire. His refining speed of the invisibility cloak had increased tremendously. Even though he had not completely refined it yet, he could easily conceal his presence and aura with the invisibility cloak. With the invisibility cloak and the spiritual abode, why would Xiaolingyu fear the dangers of the 10,000 bat cave? This was also one of the important reasons why he had agreed to Mao Zhen's request so readily. If he hid in the spiritual abode and charged into the 10,000 bat cave, although it would be very safe, it would be difficult to conceal the presence of the spiritual abode. It would definitely attract countless bat demons to stop him. As such, Xiaolingyu aimed for a small cave and put on the invisibility cloak halfway. His figure immediately disappeared from the sky above the river. The invisibility cloak's effect was miraculous. As long as Xiaolingyu did not come into contact with anything tangible, or if he did not use any spells or attacks, his presence and aura would not be exposed, unless an immortal supremacy carefully scanned him with their divine senses. Even though the 10,000 bat cave was dangerous, it was impossible for there to be any honorable realm cultivators there. Otherwise, the wonderful pill sect would have been destroyed countless times over. The inside of the cave was very dark. Bat demons hung upside down on the walls of the cave. Moreover, the hissing sounds of the bat demons could be heard from all directions. If a timid person were to enter this place, they would probably be trembling in fear. Xiao Lingyu had been to countless dangerous places and had encountered all kinds of harsh environments. Naturally, he would not be afraid in the cave of 1,000 bats. He carefully moved forward while dodging the bat demons that pounced on him from the front or behind. Regardless of whether the bat demon went out or returned, it would usually fly in the middle of the cave. Xiao Lingyu had been hiding at the bottom of the cave. She was also very careful, so it was not easy for the bat demon to bump into her. Gradually, they entered the depths of the cave of 1,000 bats. From the outside, the 10,000 bat cave looked like a long cliff with countless small caves. But from the inside, the caves were all connected to each other. It was like a natural maze. However, not long after they entered, Xiao Lingyu realized that this was not a maze. It was just that there were countless caves that did not follow any pattern. The deeper they went into the cave of 1,000 bats, the wider the intersecting caves became. The density of the bat demons gradually decreased, but the bat demons' auras became stronger. After only 4 hours, Xiao Lingyu had already encountered several bat demons that were comparable to Immortal Lord. These bat demons with higher cultivation levels were mostly alone. At most, they would gather in groups of 2 or 3. Moreover, their hind claws were hanging on the stone walls above their heads. They looked like they were sleeping soundly. After going deeper into the cave for a few hours, Xiao Lingyu suddenly arrived at a rather spacious cave. The cave was dark, but there seemed to be countless stars on all sides. Upon closer inspection, he realized that there were many fruits that glowed with a blood-red light on the stone walls. Xiao Lingyu had stayed in the cave of 1,000 bats for most of the day. After entering the cave, he scanned the surroundings and immediately looked up. It was pitch black above his head. If an ordinary person was here, they would not be able to see anything. But Xiao Lingyu saw a huge bat demon in the darkness. The bat demon's 2 fleshy wings were like black canvases. They were flat on the stone walls above his head, and they were hundreds of feet long. Waves of powerful auras gushed down from the top of his head and spread out from the caves. No other bat demons dared to stay in the vicinity. This was a bat demon that was comparable to an Immortal Lord. Judging from its undulating body, it was probably also sleeping soundly. Bat demons had very sharp senses. They would immediately wake up at the slightest movement and spread their wings to pounce. An Emperor-level bat demon's senses were naturally stronger. However, even an Emperor-level bat demon's senses could not compare to the divine senses of an Immortal Lord. Hence, Xiao Lingyu did not have to worry too much. He carefully walked to one of the stone walls of the cave and began to observe the blood-red fruit. These fruits were blood bodhi. Although they were all high-grade medicinal herbs, they could not compare to the king bodhi that Xiao Lingyu was looking for. The king bodhi, as its name implied, was the king of all bodhi fruit. Its quality was much higher than any other bodhi fruit. This was because the king bodhi could be considered divine. If the king bodhi existed in the cave of 1,000 bats, then it must be guarded by very powerful bat demons or a large group of bat demons. Even Mao Zhen would not dare to enter the cave easily. The number of bat demons in the cave of 1,000 bats was uncountable. If Xiao Lingyu had not been able to enter the cave invisibly, he would have been attacked by waves of bat demons and had no choice but to retreat. Mao Zhen must have been here before. Facing countless bat demons was probably a headache for him. After searching all 4 walls, Xiao Lingyu did not find the king bodhi. He slowly retreated from the cave. From the beginning to the end, the Emperor-level bat demon above his head did not make the slightest movement. Naturally, Xiao Lingyu would not touch the blood bodhi on the stone wall. If he did, he would inevitably expose himself and his aura. If he was not careful, the Emperor-level bat demon would sense him and bring him unnecessary trouble. For the next month or so, Xiao Lingyu continued to explore the depths of the cave of 1,000 bats. He found 7 or 8 caves with bodhi fruit. Each of these caves was guarded by an Emperor-level bat demon of varying cultivation levels. Xiao Lingyu was quite patient. He did not act rashly. But now, He had circled the depths of the cave of 1,000 bats once and still could not find the King Bodhi. He was a little suspicious. Was the King Bodhi really here? Was that old fellow Mao Zhen deliberately making things difficult for him so that he would not refine the elixir for him? Although he was becoming more and more suspicious, he still retained a glimmer of hope and confidence. He had no intention of retreating. Heaven did not disappoint those who persevered. Another 2 months passed. Xiaolingyu followed a strange sound and found an underground river. Almost all the movements in the cave of 1,000 bats were made by the bat demons. Moreover, almost all the sounds were made by the bat demons. But the sound that Xiaolingyu heard earlier also sounded like the cry of a monster. But he was sure that it was not made by the bat demons. So, Xiaolingyu followed the sound. When he saw the underground river, Xiaolingyu thought that the strange sound he heard earlier was made by the flowing water of the river. He carefully examined the river and found that this was not the case. So, he followed the direction of the underground river. After about the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he reached the end of the underground river. The water flowed straight down, forming a waterfall. Below the waterfall was a pool. In front of the waterfall was a pitch-black hollow in the belly of the mountain. Opposite the waterfall was a straight and steep stone wall. On the wall, there were countless Bodhi fruits that sparkled like stars. At this point, the strange sound that Xiaolingyu heard earlier became even more obvious. It was obvious that there was another type of monster in the pool at the bottom of the mountain. Moreover, the aura that they exuded was even more powerful. It made Xiaolingyu's heart palpitate. If there really is a Bodhi king in the cave of 1,000 bats, then he can only hide here. With a thought, Xiaolingyu slowly flew into the belly of the mountain and searched for the Bodhi king on the stone walls on all 4 sides. After 100 breaths' time, Xiaolingyu excitedly discovered that the deeper he went into the pool, the higher the grade of the Bodhi fruits on the stone walls. This made him feel that he was 1 step closer to the Bodhi king. When Xiaolingyu landed on the surface of the pool, the surface of the water suddenly splashed, and a huge black and green toad-like Yao beast floated out of the water. The monster's appearance was too ugly. Its 2 protruding eyeballs shone with a demonic light. Its sudden appearance really gave Xiaolingyu a fright. After this demon beast came out of the water, a few other similar demon beasts came out of the water one after another. They all opened their mouths and spat out a long and wide scarlet tongue, each pulling down a few Bodhi fruits from the stone wall. After that, they flew into the cave at the source of the waterfall one after another, croaking loudly before disappearing from sight. They must have gone out to look for food as a group. This is an excellent opportunity for me. Although this was what he thought, Xiaolingyu still did not dare to enter the water carelessly. This was because he did not know if there were more toad-like monsters below. The cultivation levels of the toad-like monsters that had just left were all emperor level. This made Xiaolingyu regard this pool as an extremely dangerous place. On the stone walls above the pool, Xiaolingyu searched everywhere, but he still could not find the Bodhi king. He felt that the Bodhi king must be below the water surface. He had to go down and take a look. After waiting patiently for nearly an hour, Xiaolingyu saw that the toad-like monsters had not returned. There were also no other monsters emerging from the bottom of the pool. Thus, Xiaolingyu entered the water. Although the invisibility cloak was miraculous, it could not come into contact with tangible substances. Otherwise, it would be exposed. The pool water was also a type of tangible substance. When Xiaolingyu entered the pool, not only would there be the sound of water splashing, but his entire body would also be enveloped by the pool water. There was no way for him to hide. Chapter 409. After searching for a long time, his target had finally appeared. Xiaolingyu could not hide his excitement. However, the environment here was different. He did not let his guard down because of his excitement. Instead, he scanned the area. He did not know if it was because he was too nervous or too excited. Xiaolingyu felt that when he focused all his attention on the King Bodhi, He was also locked on by a hidden aura. Maybe it's because I'm too nervous. Xiaolingyu hesitated for a moment. Seeing that there was no danger, he took a deep breath and reached out for the King Bodhi. However, just as his hand was about to touch the almost transparent King Bodhi, a rapid stream of water rolled up from the bottom of the pool and instantly wrapped around his body. At the same time, a huge force surged into Xiaolingyu's body. He could not move at all. It was as if he was tied up by a very powerful rope. Xiaolingyu's heart skipped a beat. Then, the purplish-black chaotic primordial flame came out of his body. As soon as the primordial flame appeared, Xiaolingyu felt much more relaxed. The feeling of being tied down disappeared. However, at this moment, another stream of water rushed towards him. He roared and used one of his arms to form a dragon fist. He smashed it towards the stream of water. Bang! An explosion sounded from the water. The pool water around Xiaolingyu was immediately shaken away. His body was also pushed out of the water by the stream of water. Splash! The pool water spread out in all directions. A toad-like demonic beast revealed its huge head. Its two demonic eyes glowed with a dark green light. They stared at Xiaolingyu. The anger in its eyes was obvious. Croak! The demon beast let out a cry, and a dark green water arrow immediately flew out of its mouth, flying towards Xiaolingyu. Xiaolingyu felt that he had been locked on. Therefore, he did not dodge. In the next moment, he held the silver moon-broken sword tightly in his hand and slashed out. Although the silver moon-broken sword shattered the water arrow, Xiaolingyu's body was once again pushed up a few hundred feet. However, before he could stabilize his body had already disappeared under the effect of the invisibility divine robe. Xiaolingyu's sudden disappearance caused the toad-like demon beast's pair of big eyes to immediately narrow. From its body there was a very powerful wave of thought, sweeping in all directions. This toad-like demonic beast had the cultivation of the late stage of the martial monarch level. There was no need to doubt its strength. However, it could not compare to the divine sense of a celestial prime. Therefore, it could not find Xiaolingyu's location. Although Xiaolingyu was temporarily unharmed, he did not dare to rashly fall into the water again. This was because as long as the invisibility divine robe fell into the water again, his body would be exposed, and then he would receive the fierce attacks of this demonic beast. The demonic beast's attack might not be able to do anything to Xiaolingyu. However, if it guarded the King Bodhi medallion with all its might, Xiaolingyu would also have a headache. This stalemate lasted for a few hours. Xiaolingyu did not act rashly. The demonic beast continued to float on the surface of the water, looking more patient than Xiaolingyu. However, not long after, waves of croaking sounds came from the direction of the underground river. At the same time, there were waves of bat demons hissing. The few toad-like demonic beasts that had gone out to look for food had returned. After a few moments, they all fell into the pool with a splash. Then, a dense swarm of bat demons rushed over from the direction of the underground river. In the blink of an eye, they filled the mountainside. These bat demons kept hissing at the toad-like demonic beasts in the pool, as if they were angrily protesting. The toad-like demonic beasts, on the other hand, extended their long and wide tongues from time to time, sucking the bat demons into their big mouth. These toad-like demonic beasts were actually feeding on the bat demons. Even though Xiaolingyu had been carefully and quickly dodging, there were simply too many bat demons here. They were too dense. Before he could hold on for 20 breaths of time, he was exposed because he had bumped into a bat demon. Then, countless bat demons surrounded him and rushed over fearlessly. Unable to hide his body anymore, Xiaolingyu released the chaotic primordial fire. These bat demons that lived in dark places disliked high-level flames the most. They also feared high-level flames the most. Therefore, when they saw the purplish-black chaotic primordial fire and felt that its power was too strong, they only surrounded it and did not dare to rush over. The bat demons were not very intelligent. Previously, Xiaolingyu did not harm them, so they did not have much hatred for Xiaolingyu. Very soon, they turned their attention back to the toad-like demonic beasts on the surface of the pool. Countless bat demons rushed forward one after another like black arrows, continuously attacking the surface of the pool. However, the toad-like demonic beasts had gathered together. Their tongues were like invincible whips that swept in all directions. The bat demons rushing over were just sending themselves to their death. At this time, Xiaolingyu took the opportunity to retract the chaotic primordial fire and hide his body again. He hid in a crack in the stone wall so that he would not be exposed again. However, it did not take long before Emperor-level bat demons rushed over. Moreover, they brought along countless monarch-level bat demons. The bat demons' cultivation was not as high as the toad-like demonic beasts below. Moreover, they were at a natural disadvantage because of the toad-like demonic beasts below. However, they had the advantage in numbers. If they continued to attack crazily, the toad-like demonic beasts below would not have an easy time. Xiaolingyu watched from the side with fear. If he did not have the invisible divine robe, once he was blocked by the bat demons, even if he was not weak, he would probably be exhausted to death. It was no wonder that Mao Zhen and the experts of the Wonderful Pill sect did not dare to come over to collect the Bodhi King even though they knew that he was here. The bat demons had counterattacked the toad-like demonic beasts more than once or twice. The reason why the toad-like demonic beasts could still stay here safely was because they had a late Emperor-level bat demon. Although the bat demons were numerous, they did not have a late Emperor-level bat demon. Therefore, every time they attacked, they would return without success. They would still be hunted down by the toad-like demonic beast. Croak! Seeing that the ordinary late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts could not hold on any longer, the late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts suddenly let out a loud cry, causing the entire mountainside to tremble. Then, a powerful aura surged up, instantly wiping out more than half of the bat demons that remained in the mountainside. The great Emperor-level bat demon seemed to be very good at judging the situation. He immediately called for his people to retreat. In a few moments, the mountainside was empty. Xiaolingyu was a little depressed. He had originally thought that he could watch from the sidelines and wait for the bat demons and the toad-like demonic beasts to fight until both sides were injured. Then, he would sit back and reap the benefit. Unfortunately, these bat demons were so cowardly. The moment the late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts appeared, they all fled. Xiaolingyu's plan became a pipe dream. A late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts was already a headache for Xiaolingyu. Now that there were a few more late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts, it would be even more difficult for Xiaolingyu to obtain the Bodhi King. Xiaolingyu did not dare to act blindly without thinking. He could only continue to wait for an opportunity. He decided that if there was really no better opportunity, he would wait until the late Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts left to hunt for food again. Then, he would force his way in. A month passed. The Emperor-level toad-like demonic beasts that had already sunk into the water did not emerge. Half a year later, the water surface was still very calm. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye, and they still didn't show any signs of coming out to look for food. As for the late-stage Emperor-level toad, it slowly sank into the water. It was only then that Xiaolingyu realized that Emperor-level demonic beasts would definitely be able to sustain themselves for a very long time. They definitely wouldn't come out to hunt for food every few days. I don't know how long it will take to refine a divine pill. I can't wait any longer. Xiaolingyu's patience was worn out. He took a deep breath and slowly sank into the water again. There was a saying in the secular world, if you're willing to be cut to pieces, you'll dare to pull the emperor off his horse. Now that Qing Xian was in a critical situation, Xiaolingyu couldn't care less. Qing Xian was willing to risk her life for him, so he naturally wasn't a coward. This time, as soon as Xiaolingyu fell into the water, several water arrows flew towards him, and he was pushed out of the water again. It was obvious that the toad-like demonic beasts were very vigilant, Or perhaps the late-stage Emperor-level toad had already informed everyone to be careful. Xiaolingyu had long expected this situation to happen, so he didn't panic. He hid in his spiritual abode and let it rush down quickly. Unfortunately, when his spiritual abode rushed down, he was depressed to find that all the toad-like demonic beasts, including the late-stage Emperor-level toad, were actually guarding the King Bodhi pill. Xiaolingyu couldn't appear quickly and quickly take the King Bodhi pill away. They already knew what Xiaolingyu was going to do, so they were very focused on protecting him. After thinking for a while, Xiaolingyu steeled his heart and invited out the more than 1,000 armored puppets that he had already refined. Then, he ordered them to attack at the same time. These more than 1,000 armored puppets might not be very strong individually, but at least their skin was rough and their flesh was thick. Their armor's defense was extremely strong. When they charged together, they were like a steel fortress, giving people a heavy sense of oppression. The toad-like monster beasts were also shocked by the appearance of so many iron-armored puppets. But soon after, they shouted at the same time, and a dark green light curtain suddenly appeared, protecting them inside and blocking the iron-armored puppets outside. This isn't enough. Xiaolingyu smiled disdainfully and slashed at the dark green light curtain with his silver moon-broken blade. However, the light curtain was also incomparably strong, and could actually bounce off the armored puppet's attack. However, no matter how strong the light curtain was, it gradually showed signs of collapsing under the constant bombardment of more than 1,000 armored puppets. In addition, Xiaolingyu was constantly burning with the purple-black primal chaos true fire. The dark green light curtain only lasted for less than the time to drink a cup of tea before it exploded with a loud bang. After the light curtain exploded, the toad-like demonic beasts stretched out their tongues at the same time, sweeping the armored puppets around and messing up their formation. Chapter 410. However, even though the tongues could sweep away the armored puppets, they couldn't stop the puppets from rushing over again. The armored puppets would occasionally send out beams of divine light to attack, causing damage to the tongues. If this continued, Xiaolingyu was certain that the toad-like monsters wouldn't be able to last until the end. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to attack. Instead, he focused all his attention on controlling the thousands of armored puppets to attack wildly. The toad-like monsters seemed to know that if this continued, it would be very disadvantageous for them. Therefore, after they persevered for a while, they felt a constant stabbing pain coming from their tongues. Together, they cried out loudly and quickly joined their front claws to form a circle. Then, they began to make the circle spin continuously. The auras of several toads instantly condensed into one, causing the pool water to spin continuously. Hurricanes formed and swept up all the armored puppets, making it difficult for them to stabilize their bodies. Xiaolingyu was the same. As the pool water spun, he couldn't stabilize his body at all. Therefore, he hid in his divine abode. That toad, a late-stage Emperor-level expert, still stood guard in front of the stone wall, blocking the King Bodhi behind him. "I don't believe that you can keep spinning." Xiaolingyu was in his divine abode. He wasn't anxious at all. He just stared outside with a solemn expression. The whirlpool outside was too strong. Even the divine abode was being swept up continuously. However, whether it was the divine abode or the armored puppets, they only found it difficult to stabilize. They didn't suffer the slightest damage. These toad-like monsters were able to live in the cave of 1,000 bats and didn't fear the countless bat monsters. They were indeed quite capable. Even Mao Zhen must have been here before. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so sure that the King Bodhi was here. However, he must have fought with these toads before. It was just that he couldn't win. These toads naturally couldn't keep spinning forever. Not long after, they stopped. Then, they all looked panting. The armored puppets swayed for a while before they slowly stabilized. Xiaolingyu left his divine abode again, and used his mind to control the armored puppets to fight. Countless bat monsters once again gathered above the pool, probably sensing the fierce battle here. Among them, the Emperor-level bat monsters observed the situation in the pool. Then, they ordered countless bat monsters below the Emperor level to pounce down again. Kill you while you're down. The bat demons seemed to know this as well. Seeing that the bat demons had arrived, Xiaolingyu covered her body with the chaotic primordial flame so that the bat demons would not dare to attack her. In the beginning, the bat demons also attacked the armored puppet. However, their sharp fangs and claws could not harm the armored puppets. When they discovered that the armored puppets were attacking the toad-like demon beasts that they hated the most, they gave up on attacking the armored puppets and focused all their attention on the toad-like demon beasts. Even the Emperor-level bat demons that hadn't moved before pounced down and joined the battle. Xiaolingyu and the thousands of armored puppets had already given the toad-like monsters a headache. Now, with the addition of countless bat monsters, it was even harder for them to hold on. The ordinary Emperor-class toads began to show serious injuries. The late-stage Emperor-class toad knew that the situation was bad. It let out a loud roar and unleashed its aura to wipe out countless bat demons. It also knocked aside the armored golems. Then, it used its tongue to suck King Bodhi into its mouth. Xiaolingyu was anxious. She controlled the thousands of puppets to surround the late-stage Emperor-class toad. She held the silver moon broken blade and bathed in the purplish-black chaotic primordial flame as she charged over. As for the ordinary Emperor-class toads, they were too tired to resist the bat demon's attacks to help their boss. Croak. The late-stage Emperor-class toad was having a hard time resisting the attacks of the thousands of puppets. After all, these puppets were used by Xiaolingyu to deal with immortal supremes. How could a late-stage Emperor-class demon beast be able to resist them so easily? It cried out anxiously. Then, the ordinary Emperor-class toads all self-destructed without hesitation. Several Emperor-class existences self-destructed at the same time. The power was naturally incomparably violent. Xiaolingyu hid in her divine abode without a second thought. The thousand-odd puppets had solid armor for defense. Although they had been blown far away and looked dispirited, the damage wasn't great. The bat demons didn't have it any better. In just an instant, none of the bat demons below the Emperor-class level were left. Even the Emperor-class bat demons were injured by the explosion and were all sent flying out of the mountain. What Xiaolingyu didn't expect was that after the toad-like demon beasts self-destructed, the energy that gushed out from their bodies was all absorbed by the late-stage Emperor-class toad after creating terrifying shockwaves. Then, the remaining toad-like demon beast's aura soared all the way to the peak of the late-stage Emperor-class in the blink of an eye. Moreover, it was only a hair's breadth away from the immortal supreme class. So what if you use such a vicious spell to increase your strength? As long as you're not at the immortal supreme class, I can torture you to death. Xiaolingyu was still not in a hurry. When the explosion subsided, he once again left the divine abode. Under Xiaolingyu's thoughts, the armored puppets began to move again. They once again surrounded the toad demon beast and began to attack. After the huge increase in strength, the toad became even more ferocious. However, even a tiger couldn't fight against many wolves. Gradually, it couldn't hold on any longer. The self-destruction of the few Emperor-class toads had already razed the mountain to the ground. Even the cave of 1,000 bats no longer existed. The armored puppets and the late-stage Emperor-class toad were already exposed beside the surging river. Even the cultivators of the wondrous pill sect, who were 5 million miles away, looked over in shock. The toad held on for a while longer. Seeing that it couldn't defeat its opponent, it began to flee. The armored puppets could besiege the toad, but they couldn't stop it. Xiaolingyu put away all the armored puppets and then entered the divine abode to give chase. This toad wasn't known for its speed, and the speed of the divine abode was faster than that of an ordinary immortal supreme class cultivator. It couldn't escape no matter how hard it tried. After the divine abode caught up with the toad, it ruthlessly slammed into it. After being hit, the toad's aura weakened a little. Moreover, its body was injured. After being hit several times, the toad's speed was greatly reduced. Xiaolingyu released the armored puppets and surrounded it. In the end, the toad despaired. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for it to escape. Therefore, its body began to swell. It seemed that it was going to self-destruct. Xiaolingyu could have hidden in the divine abode. No matter how the toad self-destructed, it wouldn't hurt him. However, the Bodhi King was still in its stomach. If it self-destructed, the Bodhi King would probably disappear with it. Therefore, he took a huge risk and rushed toward the toad. When the toad saw the enemy rushing toward it, it reflexively stretched out its tongue, wrapped it around the attacker, and swallowed him into its stomach. Once the self-destruction started, it couldn't be stopped unless a supreme-class cultivator came over and suppressed it with a great divine ability. Xiaolingyu entered the toad's stomach and quickly found the Bodhi King. He put it into a high-grade jade box. Just as King Bodhi was put away by Xiaolingyu, before he could do anything else, the toad's body exploded with a loud bang. Xiaolingyu was at the center of the explosion. Naturally, he suffered the greatest impact. This was also the reason why the toad swallowed him into its stomach. Although he couldn't hide in the divine abode in time, the invisibility divine robe on Xiaolingyu's body was a divine artifact. It also had the defensive power of an ordinary divine artifact. Therefore, the toad's self-destruction couldn't kill Xiaolingyu. This was also the biggest reason why Xiaolingyu dared to charge over. It was impossible for him to die. However, after the toad's self-destruction, Xiaolingyu didn't have it easy either. The invisibility divine robe helped him absorb most of the impact. However, that small amount of impact still broke countless bones in his body. His qi and blood were in turmoil. Even the chaos demon nascent soul spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. The self-destruction of a late-stage emperor-level demon beast was even more powerful. Not only did it create a huge crater with a diameter of no less than 10,000 miles, but it also created a huge black hole in space. However, this black hole closed up in an instant. Xiaolingyu put away the armored puppets that had been blasted far away. He endured the turmoil in his body and hid in the divine abode. Xiaolingyu didn't return to the wonderful pill sect directly. First, he let the divine abode fly into space. He found an ordinary-looking planet and sank deep into the ground. Only then did he let the divine abode stop. He took out the jade bathtub from the divine abode. Then, he poured the medicinal soup he had prepared in advance into the bathtub. He began to use the body transformation technique to heal his injuries. Xiaolingyu's injuries were too severe. This ordinary medicinal soup could only stabilize his injuries. It couldn't completely heal him. A few months later, Xiaolingyu returned to the wonderful pill sect's encampment. Although his complexion wasn't good, he didn't seem to be in too much trouble. With such a huge commotion in the myriad bat cave, the wonderful pill sect, as the masters of the Piaoxiang continent, naturally sent people to investigate. The situation there had already reached Mao Zhen's ears. Although he didn't want to believe it, Mao Zhen knew that it was Xiaolingyu who had created it. Originally, he thought that Xiaolingyu hadn't returned for a long time. Most likely, he had fallen. However, Elder Ping said that the soul imprint he had left on Xiaolingyu hadn't disappeared. Now that Xiaolingyu was standing in front of Mao Zhen naturally didn't have any doubts. He only asked, "Has the Bodhi King been retrieved?" Xiaolingyu didn't answer. He just handed the jade box to Mao Zhen. Then, he went to check on Qin Xian, who was lying on a wooden bed. At this time, Qin Xian's body was wrapped in a layer of ice crystals. She was still unconscious. However, Xiaolingyu didn't feel any life essence flowing out of her body. We have already fused the frost essence into her body. Now, her body is fine. Her life essence is gradually recovering. Moreover, because of the divine grade in her body, it will be easier for her to absorb and refine divine power in the future. It will be easier for her to advance to the immortal venerable realm compared to ordinary late-stage emperors, explained Elder Peng. When can you refine the divine pill? Chapter 4:11. As long as the materials are ready, I can refine it at any time. Mao Zhen had already put away the king Bodhi and replied straightforwardly. Elder Peng sent a list of materials to Xiaolingyu and said, "Among these materials, I only have 3. Xiaolingyu glanced at it and found that she didn't have any, and couldn't help frowning. There was a saying in the secular world, a clever woman can't cook without rice. No matter how powerful Mao Zhen was in alchemy, he couldn't refine anything without materials. In fact, among these materials, except for one, this old man has all the rest." Mao Zhen said, "If you have any conditions, just say it." Xiaolingyu said directly, "I have carefully collected these materials for many years. All of them are treasures. Naturally, I can't give them away for nothing. Don't beat around the bush. What conditions do you have? Just say it." Xiaolingyu impatiently took over Mao Zhen's words. "The conditions are not high. 10,000 low-grade divine stones will do," Mao Zhen said with a smile, looking like he was sure to eat Xiaolingyu. 10,000 divine stones is not high? Elder Peng immediately replied angrily. "If you think it's high, you can collect it yourself. I don't have to sell it." Mao Zhen said indifferently, "I don't have any divine stones on me." Xiaolingyu shook her head. "Then it's okay to exchange it with a low-grade divine weapon," Mao Zhen said easily. "No need, I have 10,000 low-grade divine stones here." Before Xiaolingyu could speak, Elder Peng had already answered and took out a storage bag. Mao Zhen took the storage bag unceremoniously. After glancing at it with his immortal awareness, he looked satisfied and said, "Now I only lack one main material, and this main material can actually be found in the Piaoxiang continent." "What main material? Where can I find it?" Xiaolingyu asked. "If the spirit congealing pill to be refined is not targeted at her soul characteristics, if anyone can take it, then there is no need for this main material. For her soul condition, this main material can be found at the extreme north of the fragrance continent. It is called the demon head ice soul grass." Mao Zhen first responded and then introduced. The demon head ice soul grass actually grows from the head of a type of snow demon. It's snow-white in color and looks exactly the same as the hair of the snow demon. It's very difficult to distinguish. You have to search carefully with your immortal sense to find it. Furthermore, in the extreme northern regions, there are countless snow demons. However, the demon head ice soul grass that grows from the top of their heads is 1 in a billion. Whether or not you can obtain the demon head ice soul grass completely depends on your luck. Luck? It seems that my luck has always been good. Xiaolingyu said a few more words to Elder Peng, then without a moment's delay, he flew directly to the north. The fragrance continent was vast. It took a long flight from the wondrous Pilsec station to the extreme north. Xiaolingyu did not have the patience, so after leaving the wondrous Pilsec station, he directly entered the divine dwellings. It took him less than a day to reach the extreme north of the fragrance continent. This was a world of ice and snow. Although it was bitterly cold, the environment had no effect on Xiaolingyu, who had the primal chaos fire. As soon as he arrived at the North Pole, Xiaolingyu released his immortal sense with all his might and began to search around. In this world of ice and snow, there were indeed countless snow demons. Although these snow demons were of different shapes and species, they all had one common characteristic, which was that they were all snow-white. If they quietly crawled in the snow, it was impossible to find them with the naked eye. Under the cover of his immortal sense, Xiaolingyu could easily find these snow demons. However, after searching for a full month, he still did not find the shadow of the demonic beast ice soul grass. Xiaolingyu could be said to have been forced to a dead end. Right now, he had to find the demonic head ice soul grass. There was no other way, so even if he was anxious, he could only persevere. Another few months passed. Xiaolingyu used his immortal sense to search inch by inch. At the same time, He quickly moved his position and carefully investigated the places he passed by. However, he still did not find anything. During this period, he encountered some powerful snow demons. However, these snow demons had a gentle temperament. When they saw Xiaolingyu retreat, they did not chase after him. A year passed, and he did not find anything. 3 years passed, and he still did not find anything. 10 years passed, and Xiaolingyu was still frowning as he flew in the snowy sky. 50 years passed, and Xiaolingyu had already begun to attack those snow demons that howled at him. His patience had been completely worn out. If it was not for the sake of saving Qing Xian, Xiaolingyu would not have persisted in searching in this monotonous world of ice and snow for 100 years. However, even after searching for 100 years, there was still no trace of the demonic beast Ice Soul Grass. Xiaolingyu had never heard of grass growing out of a demonic beast's head. However, he knew that there were all sorts of strange things in this world. That Mao Zhen was a great grandmaster. There was no need for him to fool Xiaolingyu with this. However, the longer he stayed here, the less time Mao Zhen had to refine the elixir. Xiaolingyu could not remain calm. He felt that those snow demons that howled at him were mocking him, so he attacked and killed them. Those snow demons howled at Xiaolingyu because Xiaolingyu had invaded their territory. They were hinting at Xiaolingyu to quickly leave, not to attack or provoke him. However, those snow demons were unlucky. They did not know what state Xiaolingyu was in. It was unknown whether it was because he had attacked too many times or because the injured snow demon had called for its friends. In short, just 110 years after Xiaolingyu came to the bitter cold of the northern part of the Piaoxiang continent, he was surrounded by countless snow demons. Among these snow demons, there was only one early-stage emperor-level powerhouse. Naturally, they could not do anything to Xiaolingyu. After venting his anger by killing a few dozen snow demons, he calmly retreated. However, Xiaolingyu had an idea and returned to the place where he had been surrounded. Those countless snow demons had not retreated yet. They rushed towards Xiaolingyu again. Xiaolingyu occupied a mountain top and continuously attacked. However, each time, he only injured and forced back the snow demons that rushed towards him. He did not directly kill them. It was not that Xiaolingyu was soft-hearted. Firstly, there was no need to kill them. Secondly, he deliberately injured these snow demons so that they could continue to call for their friend. It will be a waste of time and energy for me to find them. Why don't I just wait here for them to come find me? That's fine too. I can also find the demon head Ice Soul Grass. That was what Xiaolingyu thought. Therefore, he only beat the snow demons that rushed towards him until they lost the ability to fight. This way, they would be able to escape but would not be able to charge again. This way, he could ensure that the snow demons that rushed towards him would be different each time. The number of snow demons here was definitely more than the number of bat demons in the 10,000 bat cave. Xiaolingyu naturally would not persist. If he encountered a very powerful snow demon or if he felt that he was too tired, he would hide in the spiritual abode for a period of time before coming out. Such a miraculous existence like the spiritual abode would naturally attract many snow demons. Xiaolingyu would also not stay in the same place for too long. Occasionally, he would use the spiritual abode to quickly change his position and continue to create a bigger commotion to attract the snow demons. This was a shortcut to finding the demon head Ice Soul Grass. However, this did not guarantee that he would be able to achieve his goal. Xiaolingyu was only doing his best. In this way, it took another 200 years for Xiaolingyu to finally find the demon head Ice Soul Grass. His plan did not go to waste. It was a snow ferret. It looked very cute and was about the size of an ordinary kitten. However, it had a pair of black eyes that made it look very smart. Snow ferrets had hair on their heads, but it was usually very short. However, this snow ferret that Xiaolingyu had locked onto was different. The hair on its head was about half a foot long. This was also why Xiaolingyu had discovered it so quickly. Now that his target had appeared, Xiaolingyu, who could not wait any longer, naturally did not dawdle any longer. He immediately pounced towards the snow ferret. However, the snow ferret was very agile. Its ability to sense danger was very strong. As soon as Xiao Lingyu moved, its body turned into a white light and dodged. Xiao Lingyu actually missed. Xiao Lingyu's explosive speed in short distances was definitely not slower than an ordinary early-stage immortal emperor. However, this snow ferret was actually able to dodge his attack. This made him very surprised. He secretly thought that this snow ferret was indeed not an ordinary creature. Xiao Lingyu immediately continued to give chase. However, the snow ferret was able to dodge every time. Even if Xiao Lingyu moved first, the results would still be the same. After a few flashes, Xiao Lingyu and the snow ferret were far away from the place where countless snow demons were gathered. That snow ferret was very intelligent. Every time it dodged Xiao Lingyu's attack, it would make a very human-like face. This made Xiao Lingyu angry and amused at the same time. However, there was nothing he could do. From the aura that this snow ferret was emitting, one could tell that its cultivation was not weak. However, it was definitely not an immortal emperor. However, its speed was much faster than an ordinary early-stage immortal emperor. Xiao Lingyu found it very difficult to capture it. However, he did not dare to use his ultimate attack for fear of destroying the demon head ice soul grass. However, continuing to chase like this was not a solution. Furthermore, this snow ferret was obviously playing with him. Otherwise, with its speed, it should have been able to easily shake Xiao Lingyu off. After chasing for a while, Xiao Lingyu had a thought and activated the invisibility cloak's invisibility effect. That snow ferret was originally making a face at Xiao Lingyu. However, when Xiao Lingyu suddenly disappeared, it was obviously stunned. Then, in the next moment, it reflexively flashed its body and left the place. After flashing a few times, the snow ferret saw that the human cultivator it had been playing with for a long time still had not appeared. It could not help but stretch out a front paw and scratch its head. It looked very confused. Xiao Lingyu hid in the shadows and slowly approached the snow ferret. After all, that snow ferret did not have the soul of an immortal supremacy. Therefore, it was unable to sense Xiao Lingyu's approach. When Xiao Lingyu suddenly appeared in front of it and attacked, it sensed danger. However, it was already too late to dodge and escape. It was caught by Xiao Lingyu's hand. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu revealed himself and said proudly, "Little fellow, let's see where you can run to now." Chapter 412. Firstly, the little ferret was indeed mysterious and lovable, and secondly, Xiao Lingyu didn't know how to collect the demon head ice soul grass, so after thinking for a moment, he didn't act recklessly and instead brought the little ferret into his divine dwelling before heading towards the wondrous pill sect's encampment. The valley where the miraculous pill sect was stationed was still as quiet as ever. In a rather spacious pavilion, Qing Xian was lying on a wooden bed with an ice-cold body. Her beautiful face, which was wrapped in ice crystals, had a rosy glow to it. It was obvious that the injuries on her body had recovered very well. "Old Mao, how do we get this demon head ice soul grass?" Xiao Lingyu asked Mao Zhen after imprisoning the little ferret's body. "It's very simple. Just kill this little thing and turn its body into ashes, leaving only the demon head ice soul grass," Mao Zhen replied indifferently. When Xiao Lingyu heard this, he couldn't help but frown, thinking that this old man really wasn't a good person. His heart was actually so vicious, but he still tried his best to ask politely, "Is there a way to take the demon head ice soul grass without killing it?" "There is, but it's very troublesome. There's not much time left, so there's no need to waste time on this," Mao Zhen said indifferently. "Tell me what the method is first," Xiao Lingyu insisted. He felt that this little ferret was not only cute, but also very mysterious. At the very least, it had a strong advantage in sensing danger and speed over short distances. If he could keep it by his side, it would be a great help. Accelerate the ripening of the demon head ice soul grass and make it leave this little thing's body, Maojian replied. How do you accelerate its ripening? How long will it take? Xiaolingyu asked again. To accelerate the ripening of such a divine-grade existence, you need a drop of life essence milk, and you'll have to wait for more than 100 years, Maojian replied. When Xiaolingyu heard this, his frown naturally deepened. I do have a few drops of life essence milk, but this kind of existence can even accelerate the ripening of a divine-grade existence. For alchemy masters like us who regard high-grade herbs as our lives, it's even more precious than a divine-grade existence. You probably won't be willing to buy a drop. Moreover, can you wait for another 100 years? Maojian added with a smile. How many divine stones does a drop of life essence milk cost? Name a price. Before Xiaolingyu could answer, Elder Peng had already spoken. Elder Peng spoke up because he saw that Xiaolingyu liked the little ferret. Secondly, he felt that the little ferret was worth keeping. Thirdly, he felt very uncomfortable when he saw Maojian's posture. Elder Peng, can we wait another 100 years? Xiaolingyu asked. Why can't we wait? Now the materials are all ready. However, it will take him many years to process these materials. Moreover, the demon head ice soul grass's medicinal efficacy will definitely be much stronger when it matures. Waiting for 100 years is worth it. Elder Peng nodded and explained. Alchemy Peng, the demon head ice soul grass. Even if there's a delay, there's no delay, to the demon head ice will s to refine, and it. There sss s toozes. That s has have to wait and wait while eyes u teat use ss. Then we'll have to trouble Elder Peng again, Xiaolingyu said with a bitter smile. Maojian extorted another 10,000 low-grade divine stones for a drop of life essence milk. Fortunately, Elder Peng was also a great master and had accumulated a lot of wealth. Otherwise, only a few immortal venerables would be able to take out so many divine stones. After receiving Elder Peng's divine stones, Maojian took out a small jade bottle. There were a few drops of milky white liquid floating in the bottle. That liquid was the life essence milk. Maojian opened the jade bottle and took out a drop of life essence milk, dripping it directly on the little ferret's head. Immediately, the little ferret's body shook, and then it was tightly wrapped in a milky white light. It slowly closed its eyes and fell into a deep sleep. You guys wait here. I'll go process the ingredients. After Maojian said this, he left with his disciples. It seemed like he did not want to process the ingredients in front of everyone. When Xiaolingyu was fighting with the toads, he had suffered heavy injuries. Now that he had nothing to do, and he had to wait for more than 100 years, he could take advantage of this time to recuperate. Before 100 years had passed, Maojian had already processed all the other ingredients. He was only waiting for the demon head ice soul grass to mature. Xiaolingyu's body also gradually recovered to its peak state. Finally, after waiting for more than 120 years, the milky white light on the little ferret's body gradually disappeared. After waiting for another 10 years, the little ferret slowly opened its hazy eyes. Just as it stretched its waist, the demon head ice soul grass on its head automatically fell off with its root. After the demon head ice soul grass matured, it naturally left the little ferret's body. It did not have much effect on the little ferret. Moreover, the drop of life essence milk was not completely used on the demon head ice soul grass. It was also very helpful to the little ferret. After waking up from 100 years of slumber, the little ferret, which was originally very close to the immortal emperor stage, directly advanced to the early immortal emperor stage. As soon as the demon head ice soul grass fell off, it was sealed by Maojian and taken away. Xiaolingyu said to the little ferret, "In order to save your life, I've put in a lot of effort. Don't dawdle and quickly recognize me as your master." The little ferret was a very smart demonic beast. Although it really did not want to recognize anyone as its master and be restricted for life, the current situation was very obvious. It knew that it had no choice. If it resisted, it would only die. Therefore, it obediently nodded and allowed Xiaolingyu to inject a drop of blood soul into its soul. Since the little ferret had already recognized its master, Xiaolingyu naturally did not need to imprison it anymore. As soon as it regained its freedom, it jumped to Qing Xian's side. Because Qing Xian's side was very cold, and the little ferret liked the cold environment, Xiaolingyu did not carry it away. He only reminded it not to move around recklessly. After waiting for more than a year, Mao Zhen sent his disciple over to say that he was ready to start refining the divine pill. Brother Xiao, stay here and take care of Qing Xian. I'll go over and watch that old thing refine the pill. After saying this, Elder Peng left with Mao Zhen's disciple. Xiaolingyu did not understand much about the Tao of alchemy. Even if he went to watch, he would not be able to see anything. Therefore, he stayed by Qing Xian's side with peace of mind. A few days later, Xiaolingyu suddenly felt a thin and heavy pressure pressing down from the sky. When he went outside to look at the sky, his expression changed drastically. This was because there were dark clouds gathering in the sky above the valley and forming a huge vortex. There was even the sound of thunder rumbling from within. Dark clouds gathering in the sky was not an unusual sight. However, the dark clouds quickly formed a vortex, and a terrifying pressure came from within. This was not an ordinary sight. When he saw that there was a circle of yin and yang fish in the middle of the vortex, he could not help but exclaim, "It's a tribulation cloud." That's right, it's a tribulation cloud. The divine pills or divine tools refined in the immortal world all need to be baptized by the heavenly tribulation. This is the divine pill tribulation. Only after passing the divine pill tribulation will the divine pill be qualified to exist in this world. Elder Peng had returned at some point and was standing beside Xiaolingyu as he explained. What if it can't pass the tribulation? Wouldn't this divine pill be refined for nothing? Xiaolingyu asked nervously. Yes. Elder Peng nodded and comforted him. Generally speaking, the divine pills or divine tools refined by the alchemists will be able to pass the heavenly tribulation. After all, this kind of heavenly tribulation is much weaker than the divine tribulation that cultivators have to go through to ascend to the immortal world. At this moment, a fist-sized bead that was shining with a cold white light flew into the air and was under the terrifying heavenly pressure. It was obvious that the white bead was a divine pill that had just been refined. However, it needed to be sucked in by the heavenly tribulation before it could successfully form into a true divine pill. I have refined the divine pill. The rest depends on your luck. At this moment, Mao Zhen also came to the side and said with a pale face. It seemed that refining this divine pill had consumed a lot of Mao Zhen's energy. Brother Xiao, don't worry. More than 80% of the divine pills refined by the alchemists of the wonderful pill sect can pass the divine pill tribulation. Elder Peng was not very nervous. Peng Ba is right. However, if you encounter the 20% failure rate, you can only blame it on your bad luck. It's not that I didn't try my best. When I was refining the divine pill, Peng Ba was watching at the scene, Mao Zhen said with a smile. There was nothing wrong with saying the ugly words in advance. However, before the divine pill tribulation began, Mao Zhen had already begun to shirk his responsibility. This made Xiaolingyu feel very uneasy. After all, Mao Zhen was forced to come out of seclusion by him and was unwilling to refine this divine pill. It was hard to guarantee that Mao Zhen did not have any ill intentions. Brother Xiao, don't be reckless later. This divine pill tribulation is the same as the tribulation of cultivators. Outsiders cannot help. Otherwise, not only will the power of the heavenly tribulation double, but the person who helps will also be targeted by the heavenly tribulation. Elder Peng seemed to be worried as he transmitted his voice to Xiaolingyu. This was because he knew that Xiaolingyu would not allow this divine pill to be destroyed by the heavenly tribulation. Elder Peng, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Although Xiao Lingyu replied in such a way, he had already made up his mind to protect this divine pill no matter what. Boom! After the divine pill tribulation cloud had been brewing for a long time, a silver thunderbolt was sent down. Xiao Lingyu could feel that the power of this silver thunderbolt was comparable to the full force attack of a supreme celestial artifact. The silver thunderbolt blasted on the divine pill, causing it to be instantly wrapped in silver electric current. Its body trembled violently and shrunk at the same time. The silver electric arc disappeared. The divine pill was not destroyed, but its body had shrunk to the size of an ordinary egg. It looked more solid. Boom! Not long after, another golden thunderbolt struck down from the sky. Its power was a little more powerful than a quasi-divine artifact, but it could not be compared to a real low-grade divine artifact. This strike also landed accurately on the divine pill. Circles of golden electric arc wrapped around the divine pill. Xiao Lingyu was extremely nervous. After the golden electric arc disappeared, the divine pill continued to tremble in midair. This time, it did not immediately shrink again. Instead, it showed signs of expanding. Chapter 4:13. Xiao Lingyu had a bad premonition when he heard Elder Peng's exclamation. However, the divine pill slowly shrank after expanding for a while. Finally, it was the size of a date and stabilized. It almost couldn't withstand the second tribulation lightning. I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand the third tribulation lightning. Mao Zhen shook his head and sighed, looking very regretful. Elder Peng didn't say anything, but his expression was very gloomy. Like Xiao Lingyu, he hoped that the divine pill could withstand the tribulation lightning. From Elder Peng's expression, it was clear that he also felt that the divine pill couldn't be saved. Xiao Lingyu couldn't help but look coldly at Mao Zhen. More than 80% of the divine pills refined by the Wondrous Pill sect could survive the divine pill tribulation, but this time, it was actually going to fail. Moreover, it was already like this under the second tribulation lightning. Xiao Lingyu had reason to suspect that Mao Zhen was doing this on purpose. Don't look at me like that. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your bad luck. The probability of failure is less than 20%. Sensing Xiao Lingyu's unfriendly gaze, Mao Zhen shook his head and said. Xiao Lingyu knew that it was useless to argue with Mao Zhen now. The most important thing was to protect the divine pill. Looking at the tribulation clouds in the sky that were still increasing in power, then looking at Qing Xian who was lying on the wooden bed behind him, Xiao Lingyu gritted his teeth, leaped up, and flew to the divine pill. Brother Xiao, you can't. Elder Peng called out. He had placed all his hopes on Xiao Lingyu, so naturally, he didn't want Xiao Lingyu to risk his life. Moreover, he also felt that even if Xiao Lingyu made a move, he might not be able to protect the divine pill. Moreover, it was very likely that he would make a meaningless sacrifice. However, Xiao Lingyu couldn't care less. He had been busy for a long time, expended a lot of energy, and even took a great risk for this divine pill. Even if it wasn't for Qing Xian, he didn't want this divine pill to go up in smoke. This divine pill would definitely not be able to withstand the last bolt of tribulation lightning. If it were to take action when the tribulation lightning struck, it would definitely be too late. Therefore, Xiao Lingyu took the opportunity to fly up before the last bolt of tribulation lightning struck. Xiao Lingyu had just flown into the air when she was locked onto by a powerful aura. The tribulation lightning that was about to descend began to brew again. What a pity! Mao Zhen looked at the sky, shook his head, and sighed. What's a pity? Your divine pill? Elder Peng asked with a gloomy face. What a pity for the divine pill. What a pity for such a talented young man, Mao Zhen replied. Don't pity the divine pill. If you didn't do it on purpose, how could the divine pill be so weak? Elder Peng said coldly. You can't say that. When I was refining the divine pill, you were also present. If I didn't do my best, would you have agreed at that time? Mao Zhen said with a very reasonable expression. Although I have also studied the Tao of alchemy, I am not proficient in it. If you, a dignified alchemy grandmaster, were to play some tricks, how could I see through it?" Elder Peng snorted coldly. "Don't measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain," Mao Zhen replied. "If you can be considered a gentleman, then there are no villains in the immortal world." Elder Peng did not hide his sarcasm. "I know you are mocking me because you are worried about those divine stones. I won't bicker with you." Mao Zhen looked very magnanimous. Elder Peng was so angry that his body trembled. He did not know what to say to this old scoundrel. After all, there was no evidence to check whether the other party had really done something when refining the divine pill. This tribulation lightning is even more powerful than the divine lightning that ordinary immortal supremes face during their divine tribulation. He most likely won't be able to withstand it. What a pity! Mao Zhen opened his mouth again, as if he wanted to infuriate Elder Peng to death. That may not be the case. Elder Peng was not convinced. Boom! Just as the two martial grandmasters were discussing, a 5-colored divine lightning fell from the sky and blasted straight at Xiao Lingyu's head. Before the divine lightning could hit him, Xiao Lingyu had already activated his spiritual abode and used it to shield his head. Then, a purplish-black flame turned into a fire dragon and rushed into the sky. Then, more than 1,000 armored puppets appeared around Xiao Lingyu in an instant and shot a 5-colored divine light into the sky at the same time. Boom! 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 The 5-colored divine lightning was extremely powerful. First, it blasted the spiritual abode away, then dispersed the purplish-black fire dragon. Finally, it withstood the bombardment of more than 1,000 divine lights and landed on Xiao Lingyu's body. Whether it was the spiritual abode, the chaotic primordial flame, or the 1,000 divine lights, they were all extraordinary existences. Although they could not completely block the 5-colored divine lightning, they had reduced more than half of its power. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu was wearing the invisible divine robe, which could also weaken the divine lightning's power. Therefore, Xiao Lingyu only suffered less than 30% of the 5-colored divine lightning's power. Even so, Xiao Lingyu was instantly blasted into the ground. His body and the divine lightning created a bottomless pit in the ground. Xiao Lingyu took the bombardment of the 5-colored divine lightning head-on. Naturally, the divine elixir was saved. The tribulation clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, and a ray of light enveloped the divine elixir. This kid has so many powerful techniques. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant in the wonderful pill sect. However, to save the divine elixir, I'm afraid he'll have to leave his life behind. As Mao Zhen thought this, the corner of his mouth revealed an undetectable sinister smile. He thought again, even the celestial sovereign has to be polite when he sees me. Who do you think you are to threaten me? You really don't know the difference between life and death. Elder Peng did not look at the divine elixir in the sky, nor did he think much of it. Instead, he looked directly at the wooden bed behind him. When he saw that the little ferret lying next to the Qin Xian on the wooden bed was still alive and well, Elder Peng let out a long sigh and said, "I told you, that might not be the case." If Xiao Lingyu had been killed by the 5-colored divine lightning, then the little ferret, who had recognized Xiao Lingyu as its master, would have been destroyed as well. Since the little ferret was fine, it proved that Xiao Lingyu was at least still alive. When Mao Zhen heard Elder Peng's words, he also looked behind him. When he saw that the little ferret was safe and sound, he immediately frowned. "Your expression betrayed you," Elder Peng said with a cold smile. Mao Zhen did not respond. Instead, he flew directly toward the big pit that Xiao Lingyu had created. Elder Peng immediately followed him, only to see Mao Zhen throw a golden ball into the big pit. Boom! Elder Peng had just caught up when a golden light flashed in front of his eyes. Then, an earth-shattering explosion sounded. He was caught off guard and was directly blown far away. As for the little ferret in the pavilion, it was the first to sense the danger. Before the explosion occurred, it hugged Qing Xian's ice-cold body and ran far away. After throwing the golden ball, Mao Zhen jumped up and put the divine elixir into a jade box. The other cultivators of the wonderful pill sect surrounded him and stared coldly at Elder Peng. Elder Peng spat out a few mouthfuls of blood from the explosion. After he steadied himself, he pointed at Mao Zhen and said, "How dare you do this? Humph! You dare to attack the wonderful pill sect and capture my disciple to threaten me. Why wouldn't I dare to do the same? Do you think that the wonderful pill sect can be bullied so easily?" Mao Zhen said with a righteous tone. Elder Peng's face was full of resentment, but he was already injured. Moreover, the other party had the advantage in numbers. What could he do? However, in the next moment, Elder Peng seemed to have thought of something. He looked behind him, but he did not see Qing Xian and the ferret. After looking around again, Elder Peng finally saw the little ferret. He could not help but laugh loudly. "Ha ha! Old bastard, you'll regret your foolish actions," Elder Peng said with a smile. Mao Zhen also saw that the little ferret was still unharmed. He frowned again and cursed, "This kid is really tough. He's still alive." As he spoke, another golden ball appeared in Mao Zhen's hand. He threw it at the big pit. "I'm really tough." Before the golden ball exploded, a voice full of hatred suddenly sounded in Mao Zhen's ears. Mao Zhen was shocked. A ball of purple-black flames had already wrapped around his body. "Stop, you brat!" Boom! Mao Zhen's white-haired junior brother had just shouted when another explosion came from the big pit below. Mao Zhen's junior brother struck out with his palm. Xiaoling Yu transformed one of his arms into a dragon claw and met the attack head-on. When the two palms collided, Mao Zhen's junior brother was sent flying. Xiaoling Yu only took a few steps back, but he coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, under the control of Xiaoling Yu's will, more than 1,000 puppets quickly reacted and surrounded the area. Elder Peng also flew over at this time, his face full of surprise and joy. As an alchemy grandmaster, Mao Zhen also possessed a divine fire. At this time, a ring of green divine fire flickered around his body, resisting the purple-black chaos true fire's burning. For a moment, he did not look worried. "I've fulfilled all your conditions," Xiaoling Yu said angrily. "Even if I forced my way into the wondrous pill sect, and even if I did kidnap your disciple to threaten you, you're still a grandmaster respected by millions of cultivators in the immortal world. How could you be so vicious?" Surrounded by countless armored cultivators, Xiaoling Yu looked completely unaffected. Add to that the fact that Elder Peng was present, the other cultivators of the wondrous pill sect didn't dare to make a move. "I don't think you'll be grateful to me after I helped you refine a divine pill. When you gave me those things, you probably wanted me to pay you back double in the future, right?" Mao Zhen said as he resisted with all his might. "To tell you the truth, your guess is correct. I did have such thoughts. Unfortunately, if you hadn't been so vicious, I might have let you go," Xiaoling Yu said. "There's a saying in the mortal world. The one who strikes first gains the upper hand, the one who strikes later loses. Just now was the best time for me to kill you. I won't give up so easily. If I had to choose again, I would still do the same," Mao Zhen said shamelessly. "Unfortunately, you underestimate me too much. When I was struck down by the divine lightning just now, my body didn't actually suffer that much damage," Xiaoling Yu said with a smile. "It's not that I underestimated you, but that I thought highly of you. However, your strength still exceeded my expectations. I also didn't expect your divine clothes to be invisible." Mao Zhen replied with a wry smile, then said, "Can you leave behind a legacy for our wondrous pill sect?" Chapter 4:14. "You're asking me to leave trouble for myself in the future," Xiaoling Yu said nonchalantly. If Xiaoling Yu hadn't used the invisibility divine robe to conceal himself, launched a sneak attack, and enveloped Mao Zhen with the primal chaos primordial fire, Xiaoling Yu wouldn't have been able to subdue Mao Zhen so easily even with Elder Peng's help. However, Mao Zhen was currently enveloped by the primal chaos primordial fire and couldn't escape at all. He could only use his own green divine fire to defend himself. However, the green divine fire was slightly weaker than Elder Peng's blue divine fire. How could it resist the purplish-black primal chaos primordial fire for long? In less than 100 breaths, the defensive barrier formed by Mao Zhen's green divine fire had weakened slightly before gradually shrinking. The purplish-black primal chaos primordial fire gradually approached Mao Zhen's body. The knell of death had already rung in Mao Zhen's ears. "Why don't we make him swear an oath that he'll never be our enemy again and let him go this time?" Elder Peng suggested. "Is that necessary?" Xiao Lingyu asked indifferently. "He's an alchemy grandmaster after all. If Brother Xiao kills him, I'm afraid you'll incur the wrath of those venerables," Elder Peng said calmly. "I don't care about the wrath of those venerables. I only know that he tried to kill me just now. I'll never let such a person go," Xiao Lingyu said firmly and confidently as he shook his head. Elder Peng was about to persuade him again when the purplish-black primal chaos primordial fire burned Mao Zhen's body. At that moment, Xiao Lingyu reached into the primal chaos primordial fire and removed Mao Zhen's storage ring as his body slowly melted. In just a few breaths, Mao Zhen's body turned into ashes, leaving only a ball of green divine fire. "Elder Peng, you can deal with this ball of divine fire." After retrieving his primal chaos primordial fire, Xiao Lingyu flew to Qing Xian's side. At the same time, he commanded the thousands of armored puppets to surround and kill the cultivators of the wondrous pill sect. However, as soon as the puppets shone with divine light, Xiao Lingyu stopped them and said, "Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. Now that Mao Zhen, who tried to kill me, is dead, if you can swear an oath with your souls that you won't avenge him or become my enemy in the future, I'll spare your lives." "I'm willing to swear." Mao Zhen's disciple, who was an early-stage divine immortal, of course, of heaven. Xiao Lingyu smiled at Mao Zhen's disciple. He didn't need to worry about such a cowardly person. "Then," he said, "hand over my scimitar." Mao Zhen's disciple didn't hesitate and obediently handed over the scimitar that was as thin as a cicada's wing to Xiao Lingyu. It wasn't easy to cultivate to the early-stage divine immortal realm. Moreover, he had received the true teachings of an alchemy grandmaster. A bright future awaited him. He didn't want to lose his life because of a moment of loyalty. "What about the rest of you?" Xiao Lingyu looked at the other disciples of the wondrous pill sect. Compared to the cultivators of the devil world, immortals were more content with life and didn't like fighting. They treasured their lives even more. After some thought, the other disciples of the wondrous pill sect looked at Mao Zhen's white-haired junior brother. After he sighed and took the lead in swearing an oath, the other disciples of the wondrous pill sect followed suit. Xiao Lingyu waved his hand and said, "You're all free now. In the future, don't let me see any of you in the immortal world." Without an alchemy grandmaster, the wondrous pill sect naturally couldn't continue to control the Piaoxiang continent. Although the disciples of the wondrous pill sect had deep feelings for the Piaoxiang continent, they had no choice but to leave. Even if Xiao Lingyu didn't chase them away now, other experts from the immortal world would come in the future. After all the disciples of the wondrous pill sect left, Xiao Lingyu put away the puppets, divine palaces, and scimitar. Then, he took out a jade box from Mao Zhen's storage ring. Xiao Lingyu opened the jade box, revealing a white divine pill that was suffused with a cold mist. A knowing smile appeared on his face. He used the primal chaos true fire to melt the ice crystals on Qing Xian's body and helped her sit up straight. Then, he fed the divine pill into her mouth. When the divine pill was first refined, its quality was extremely high. It could even withstand the bombardment of divine lightning. However, after transcending the tribulation and being enveloped by the light of the heavenly tribulation for a period of time, it would melt in her mouth and its medicinal efficacy would automatically spread. This divine pill's main effect was on the soul, so its medicinal efficacy directly invaded Qing Xian's knowledge. Qing Xian's soul was nourished and she quickly woke up. Then, she heard Xiao Lingyu's reminder, quickly circulate your cultivation and absorb the divine pill's medicinal efficacy. Although Qing Xian didn't understand what was going on, she still acted rationally and gradually entered a state of cultivation. Puff, puff. After Qing Xian's condition stabilized and improved, Xiao Lingyu finally relaxed. However, he coughed up several mouthfuls of foul blood again. When he was talking to Mao Zhen just now, Xiao Lingyu appeared very relaxed. In fact, his body that had just recovered suffered heavy injuries under the bombardment of the five-colored divine lightning. Fortunately, his body and bloodline were very strong, so he was able to persevere. When he was just blasted into the ground, he activated the invisibility divine robe's invisibility function and left the huge pit without stopping for a moment. When Mao Zhen saw that the little ferret was safe and sound, he threw a golden pearl into the huge pit. However, Xiao Lingyu had already left the pit and was hiding nearby to see if Mao Zhen would take advantage of the situation. Xiao Lingyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. When he saw that Elder Peng was concentrating on refining the green divine fire, Xiao Lingyu felt at ease and took out the jade bathtub. Elder Peng had also contributed a lot this time. At the very least, he had taken out many divine stones to help. Moreover, Elder Peng had previously given up his blue divine fire. It was only natural that Xiao Lingyu handed Elder Peng the green divine fire. Moreover, the green divine fire wasn't very useful to Xiao Lingyu. After all, he already had the purplish-black primordial flame of chaos. Moreover, he didn't want to go to the Fire Source continent to borrow the sacrificial flame altar to merge the green divine fire with the primordial flame of chaos. Qing Xian's experience had made him very wary of the sacrificial flame altar. Even if he borrowed the sacrificial flame altar and successfully merged the primordial flame of chaos with the green divine fire, Xiao Lingyu wouldn't be able to use his bloodline to suppress the power of the primordial flame of chaos. He also wouldn't be able to control the new primordial flame of chaos. With the help of the powerful medicinal effects of the divine pill, Qing Xian only used a dozen or so days to completely recover. When she stopped cultivating, Xiao Lingyu was still in the bathtub. Whoosh! Qing Xian had just stood up when a beam of white light shot towards her from nearby. She didn't know if it was because she had just recovered and wasn't used to it, or because the white light was too fast, but she actually wasn't able to dodge it. Fortunately, the white light was not an attack. It was a cute and clever little ferret that had transformed into it. The little ferret was very fond of the icy aura on Qing Xian's body. After it pounced into Qing Xian's arms, it even intimately rubbed against her. After a moment of surprise, Qing Xian's beautiful face immediately bloomed with a smile. She said gently, "What a miraculous little thing." After that, Qing Xian hugged the little ferret. She first glanced at the bathtub, then flew to Elder Peng's side. She said, "He seems to be heavily injured." Elder Peng continued to refine the green divine fire as he recounted what happened after Qing Xian had fainted on the sacrificial flame altar. Naturally, he deliberately exaggerated how worried Xiao Lingyu was about Qing Xian's safety. He also exaggerated the risk Xiao Lingyu had taken to save Qing Xian. Elder Peng had cultivated for countless years and experienced many things. Naturally, he could see Qing Xian's feelings. He also felt that Qing Xian and Xiao Lingyu were indeed very compatible. Therefore, he wanted to play matchmaker. As Elder Peng narrated, the happiness on Qing Xian's face grew even stronger. She asked like a little girl, "Really?" Elder Peng naturally answered with certainty. Everything he said was true, although he didn't know Xiao Lingyu's feelings and didn't know how much danger Xiao Lingyu had taken. He's just too reckless. He actually killed Great Grandmaster Mao. Although Qing Xian's words were reproachful, there was a hint of pride in her reproach. Sister Qing Xian, such a good son-in-law. You have to hurry up. Don't let other girls beat you to it. Elder Peng reminded her with a smile. When Qing Xian heard this, her face, which was originally filled with happiness, immediately changed color. She sighed and said, "Someone has already beaten me to it." The smile on Elder Peng's old face immediately froze. He said in astonishment, "It can't be." Qing Xian was speechless. The sadness on her face was obvious. Elder Peng thought for a moment and said, "Actually, Brother Shao is a demonic cultivator. He cultivates demonic technique. Sister Qing Xian, on the other hand, is an immortal cultivator. You cultivate immortal energy. Two completely different cultivation systems can't be combined." Qing Xian's expression became even more conflicted. She didn't know what to say at that moment. She quietly descended and turned her back to Xiaolingyu's bathtub. She gazed into the distance and gently stroked the little ferret's soft fur. After all, Elder Peng possessed the divine fire in the past, so he had ample experience in refining the divine fire. Therefore, it took him less than 2 years to refine a portion of the divine fire. He was already able to control the green divine fire at will. Xiaolingyu, on the other hand, only stood up from the bathtub a few years later. In fact, the medicinal soup in the bathtub was already clear, but it was rare for him to relax, so he slept in the bathtub for a while. The sound of splashing water pulled Qing Xian out of her thoughts. She immediately turned around and saw Xiaolingyu's naked body. She immediately spat and her face flushed red. Elder Peng flew to Xiaolingyu's side and reminded him, "It won't be long before the news of the miraculous pill school's destruction spreads in the immortal world. This place will soon become a place of trouble. It's better for us to leave quickly." Xiaolingyu nodded and then looked at the little ferret. However, the little ferret ignored him. Xiaolingyu laughed bitterly and said, "Since you don't like me, I won't force you. I'll remove you as my master now." He waved his arm at the little ferret. The blood soul that Xiaolingyu injected into the little ferret's soul automatically flew out and dispersed. Chapter 4:15. After regaining its freedom, the little ferret was naturally very happy. After all, no one wanted to be controlled by others, and no one wanted to die because of their master's death. However, the little ferret did not leave according to Xiaolingyu's words. Instead, it was still lazily lying in Qing Xian's arms, looking very sentimental. "Little fellow, you will follow big sister from now on. I will definitely not bully you, and I will not allow anyone to bully you," Qing Xian said dotingly. When the little ferret heard this, it seemed to understand Qing Xian's meaning. It actually waved its little fist at Xiaolingyu with a fierce look as if to say, "You dare to bully me in the future." Xiaolingyu, Elder Peng, and Qing Xian were all amused by the little ferret's mischievous look. Then, the three of them packed up everything and flew towards the teleportation array of the Piaoxiang continent. While continuously teleporting to the East Imperial continent, Xiaolingyu continued to blood bond with the armored puppet and his divine artifact. Although this trip to the Piaoxiang continent was a long one, and he had suffered a lot, the rewards were still quite good. Not to mention Qing Xian's divine elixir, just the treasures in Mao Zhen's storage ring were enough to make even an immortal supremacy jealous. As an alchemy grandmaster, Mao Zhen's storage ring contained close to 100,000 low-grade divine stones, dozens of divine elixirs with different effects, 2 divine artifacts of decent quality, and thousands of high-grade herbs. Even the Bodhi King that Xiaolingyu took a risk to obtain from the 10,000 bat cave was in the ring. Even though they did not have to wait in line to teleport from the Piaoxiang continent to the East Imperial continent, it still took a full 800 years to complete the journey. Elder Peng did not follow them all the way to the East Imperial continent. Instead, he parted ways with Xiaolingyu and Qing Xian halfway, saying that he was going back to take a look. After Xiaolingyu returned to the Nanhua Immortal School, they had a period of peaceful days. However, not long after, Xiaolingyu, who was meditating on the second floor of his pavilion, suddenly sensed a strange movement in his storage ring. He sank his consciousness into it and was overjoyed. The sole jade pendant that Zhong Ji had given to Xiaolingyu had shattered in Xiaolingyu's storage ring. This was the signal that the Bao Inquirer organization had completed their mission. In other words, the detective organization had found Anya. Xiaolingyu could not suppress the excitement in her heart. She immediately got up and left the loft. He rushed to the East Imperial City as fast as he could, and then went straight to that unremarkable shop. Haha, Brother Zhao's speed is really fast. Zhong Ji was still sitting on a chair on the second floor. When he saw Xiaolingyu, he stood up and smiled. You're more efficient when you're around, Xiaolingyu praised with a smile. The key is that we value this mission. Naturally, we completed it quickly. If it was someone else who issued the same mission, it would probably take at least tens of thousands of years to find her, Zhong Ji said meaningfully. Thank you, Brother Zhong. Xiaolingyu thanked him sincerely. Brother Xiao, you're too polite. We're family after all. Your matter is the matter of the Bao Inquirer organization and all the descendants of Earth. Zhong Ji shook his head and said, Where is the person I'm looking for? Xiaolingyu did not continue with the pleasantries and asked directly. Brother Xiao, don't worry. She's doing very well now. Furthermore, we have experts protecting her in the dark. Zhong Ji first comforted her and then said, The immortal world continent she's in now is a little far from the East Imperial continent. Even if she doesn't have to line up and teleport all the way there, it will take at least 2,000 years to arrive. Thank you for your concern, Brother Zhong. Xiaolingyu still had a grateful expression. If Brother Xiao has something to do and has no time to go over, we can send someone to escort her all the way here, Zhong Ji continued. I'll go over myself. I don't dare to trouble Brother Zhong. Xiaolingyu shook his head and said. Zhong Ji nodded. After pondering for a moment, he said, Brother Xiao, you should consider Elder Qi's suggestion last time. Although we descendants of Earth don't dare to openly announce our identity in the immortal world, it doesn't mean that we're weak. The strength we have is definitely enough to destroy any top aristocratic family in the immortal world. Xiaolingyu responded, I'm not a qualified leader, but I'll say it again. If there's anything you need me for, I won't refuse. Anya was so far away from the East Imperial continent, but the Bao Inquirer organization could find her so quickly. From this, it could be seen how powerful the descendants of Earth were. Zhong Ji didn't try to persuade him anymore. He immediately told Xiaolingyu Anya's current location. Xiaolingyu also thought that the Bao Inquirer organization would use Anya to threaten him. But now, it seemed that they didn't have such plans. He was relieved. After obtaining Anya's exact location, Xiaolingyu didn't dawdle anymore. First, he returned to the Nanhua Immortal Sect, asked Qing Pingzi for a token, and said that he would be leaving for a period of time. Then, he left the East Imperial continent. 2 years after Xiaolingyu left, Qing Xian only found out that Xiaolingyu had left. There was a lot of resentment in his heart. Just like before, he kept teleporting while refining all his divine artifacts with the primal chaos true fire. Not only was the journey peaceful, but his overall strength was also increasing as the refinement of each divine artifact deepened. Just as Zhong Ji said, Xiaolingyu used a total of 2,200 years to teleport to the Immortal Realm continent where Anya was located. 2,000 years of teleportation without waiting in line. It was hard for Xiaolingyu to calculate how far he could cross. He also couldn't count the number of Immortal Realm continents he had passed through. The entire space of the Immortal Realm could only be described as boundless. This continent was called the 10,000 Flower Continent. It was one of the most famous continents in the Immortal Realm. The reason why the 10,000 Flower Continent was famous was because of the colorful flowers and plants that could be seen everywhere. The scenery was extremely beautiful. For the more leisurely immortals who had always lived a comfortable life, this was undoubtedly one of the best places to live for a long time. It was said that in ancient times, the flower people lived on the 10,000 flower continent. However, after the realms were separated, the flower people's experts went to the immortal realm. The flower people's cultivators weren't very strong either in terms of overall strength or individual strength. As a result, the flower people gradually disappeared in the long river of history. The 10,000 flower continent was now a prosperous continent in the immortal realm. It wasn't just because of the beautiful scenery, but also because there was a very powerful sect there, the Heaven's Incense School. The Heaven's Incense School's disciples were all female cultivators. The reason why they were said to be very strong was because there was an immortal sovereign in the Heaven's Incense School. That immortal sovereign was the famous immortal blue jade in the immortal realm. The Heaven's Incense School was different from the other top sects in the immortal realm. They didn't control a large portion of the continents in the immortal realm, nor did they set up their own businesses on the continents to plunder immortal stones. Their cultivators all cultivated peacefully on the 10,000 flower continent and didn't usually go to other continents. Only they knew where the large amount of immortal stones they needed for cultivation came from. In the hearts of all the female cultivators in the immortal realm, the Heaven's Incense School was the sect they wanted to join the most. However, it was a top sect with an immortal sovereign, so it wasn't easy for just anyone to join. The more it was like this, the more female cultivators who thought they had extraordinary talent would come every year to be tested by the Heaven's Incense School's experts to see if they had the qualifications to join. There were also many male cultivators who came, wanting to find one or more female cultivators with decent talent to become their dual cultivation partner. None of this had anything to do with Xiaolingyu. However, when Xiaolingyu arrived on the 10,000 flower continent, she followed Zhongji's instructions and found the secret branch of the intelligence agency in the 10,000 flower city. However, she heard some bad news. A few hundred years ago, Anya had also participated in the Heaven's Incense School's test. However, not only had Anya failed the test, she had also been forcefully detained by the Heaven's Incense School for cheating and contradicting their examiners. She hadn't been released to this day. The head of the intelligence agency on the 10,000 flower continent knew that Anya was an important person, so he sent people to negotiate with the Heaven's Incense School. However, the Heaven's Incense School claimed that they had already released Anya. However, the intelligence agency was unable to find Anya's whereabouts. Originally, we had people protecting her in secret, but when she entered the Heaven's Incense School's encampment for the test, our people couldn't follow her in. Otherwise, such an accident wouldn't have happened, the head of the investigation department helplessly explained to Xiaolingyu. Continue searching for her. I'll go ask the Heaven's Incense School. Xiaolingyu first left a soul imprint with the head so that they could communicate more easily. Afterwards, she left the 10,000 flower city with a gloomy expression and headed for the Heaven's Incense School station. Everywhere she passed, flowers bloomed and plants tasted delicious. However, Xiaolingyu wasn't in the mood to appreciate the scenery at all. Her face remained ashen the entire time. After 2 whole days, Xiaolingyu finally arrived at the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School station. The Heaven's Incense School station was built in the mountains. It covered a large area and was filled with flowers and plants. The scenery was pleasant. The entrance to the station was very grand as well. It actually used 2 large mountains as the pillars on either side, and a huge and very long piece of white jade was placed between the 2 mountains as the door beam. The words, Heaven's Incense School, were written on the huge piece of white jade. It was said that the cultivators of the Heaven's Incense School had not placed the huge piece of white jade between the 2 mountains. Instead, it had been like this since ancient times. The Heaven's Incense School was named after the words on the huge piece of white jade. 2 female cultivators in bright red soft armor stood guard at the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School's station. They were as beautiful as flowers. As soon as Xiaolingyu arrived at the entrance, she was stopped by the two female cultivators. According to the rules of the Heaven's Incense School, we do not accept male cultivators. No male cultivators are allowed to enter the Heaven's Incense School's station. May I ask why you have come? One of the female cultivators in red armor asked with a hint of arrogance. I've come to look for someone. She came to the Heaven's Incense School to participate in the test before, but she never came out, Xiaoling Yu said as politely as she could. Chapter 4:16. She didn't pass the test. Xiaoling Yu shook his head. That's impossible. If she didn't pass the test, there's no way our Heaven's Incense School would keep her. You should look elsewhere, the female guard said with certainty. Can you find a steward to talk to? Xiaoling Yu wasn't very satisfied with the female guard's attitude. Stewards are all busy. They won't come out for such a small matter, the female guard said indifferently. The Heaven's Incense School had a celestial sovereign, so they had the capital and confidence to not fear any major powers in the celestial realm. Their disciples were naturally full of energy, especially when they were in front of their own school. Then how can the two of you be so sure that the person I'm looking for has left the Heaven's Incense School? No matter what, she went missing after entering your Heaven's Incense School. Furthermore, you've detained her. Shouldn't you send a steward to explain the situation? Xiaoling Yu asked with narrowed eyes. Detained? What a joke. Why would our Heaven's Incense School detain her? When you speak, you should consider it carefully. Don't make wild guesses. If you damage our Heaven's Incense School's reputation, we'll definitely hold you responsible for spreading rumors, the female guard said firmly. She was detained. It was the person who came with her who said it himself. Do you still want to deny it? Xiaoling Yu said with a cold smile. How can you be so sure that the person who came with her wasn't lying? The female guard asked in return. Xiaoling Yu knew that the King of Hell was easy to deal with. It was pointless to say anything to these ordinary disciples who didn't know much. His patience had been completely worn away. He was also very worried about Anya's situation. He said coldly, Are you going to report this? Please return. The truth is definitely not what you think it is, the female guard said indifferently. She appeared cold. Humph. Then I can only go in and ask for the truth myself. Xiaoling Yu was furious. He directly passed between the two guards and entered the Heaven's Incense School. You really don't know the meaning of death. The two guards didn't stop him, nor did they chase after him. One of them crushed a jade slip. The Heaven's Incense School reacted very quickly. As soon as Xiaoling Yu entered the encampment, she was surrounded by a group of female cultivators in bright red armor. Audacious thief! How dare you trespass into the Heaven's Incense School's territory? Are you seeking death? A female disciple from the Heaven's Incense School had just finished speaking when she was shocked to discover that the man they had surrounded had already charged out of their encirclement. Xiaoling Yu was extremely fast. Wherever she passed, she destroyed the buildings of the Heaven's Incense School. However, she did not harm any of the Heaven's Incense School disciples. He was here to ask for someone, not to kill. Moreover, he and the person in charge of the Baoqi branch were not sure if Anya was still being held captive by the Heaven's Incense School. Now, he was deliberately making a big commotion to force the person in charge of the Heaven's Incense School to come out and see him. In fact, Xiaoling Yu could also use his identity as a member of the Nanhua Immortal Sect to ask the person in charge of the Heaven's Incense School to come out and see him. However, if Anya was really being held captive by the Heaven's Incense School, he would most likely be unfavorable to the Heaven's Incense School. He was afraid that he would bring unnecessary trouble to the Nanhua Immortal Sect. Therefore, he had to force his way in. He was causing trouble in the Heaven's Incense School's encampment. Naturally, the experts of the Heaven's Incense School would not sit idly by. Less than 100 breaths after he rushed in, more than 10 startled Emperor-level experts came and surrounded him again. Since the Emperor-level experts had already come out, There was no need for Xiao Lingyu to cause any more trouble. He immediately explained his purpose for coming. Junior sister Mei Ling, you are in charge of selecting disciples for the sect. Do you know about this? A seemingly middle-aged female emperor-level expert asked the person beside her. Senior sister, there is no such thing. This person must be deliberately causing trouble, the female immortal emperor called Mei Ling replied. Humph. Your Excellency is really audacious. You will pay the price for your foolish actions today with blood. The seemingly middle-aged female emperor-level expert said coldly. Being surrounded by so many emperor-level experts, even though Xiao Lingyu's abilities were not weak, it was still very troublesome. When the group of female emperor-level experts prepared to attack together, Xiao Lingyu hid himself. The target suddenly disappeared into thin air, and everyone's immortal senses also lost their target. Naturally, they were all shocked. When they began to continuously vibrate the space in an attempt to force the target out, Xiao Lingyu had already escaped the encirclement and fled far away. There were some things that he could not be completely sure of. After all, the information that the person in charge of the spying school branch knew was from other people's mouth. Whether it was the truth or not was still uncertain. Xiao Lingyu did not want to anger a celestial supremacy, so he did not make too much of a fuss. He only wanted to see if Anya was still in the Heaven's Incense School. The person in charge of the Heaven's Incense School did not admit to it, so he could only carefully search for her himself. However, although the Heaven's Incense School encampment looked beautiful, there were hidden protective and alert restrictions everywhere. In his anxiety, Xiao Lingyu would naturally touch them. Occasionally, he would expose himself or be attacked. Fortunately, the invisibility divine robe's defense was quite strong. Xiao Lingyu did not suffer any injuries. Furthermore, he could immediately turn invisible again after being discovered. At this moment, the Heaven's Incense School encampment was even more lively than when Xiao Lingyu was wreaking havoc everywhere. The experts of the Heaven's Incense School all knew that an expert had snuck in, but they did not know where the intruder was. They could only search everywhere like headless flies. They mobilized all the disciples that could be mobilized to search carefully and increase their vigilance. Just as Xiao Lingyu was bitterly searching everywhere, the female immortal emperor called Mei Ling quietly came to a garden in the depths of the Heaven's Incense School encampment. Seeing that there was no one around, she walked in front of a rockery and chanted a few incantations. The rockery suddenly disappeared, and a cave entrance appeared. Mei Ling entered the cave and chanted a few more incantations. The rockery that had disappeared earlier reappeared and completely covered the cave entrance. What Mei Ling did not know was that when the cave entrance appeared, Xiao Lingyu, who was still moving around secretly in the Heaven's Incense School encampment, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Then, he frowned and rushed toward the garden. After all, Xiao Lingyu and Anya had dual cultivated for many years. Not only were they very familiar and sensitive to each other's auras, but they could also sense each other's presence as long as they were not too far away. They could also roughly determine each other's location. Just a moment ago, Xiao Lingyu suddenly sensed Anya's presence and approximate location. However, this feeling disappeared after just 2 breaths. As he rushed toward the garden, Xiao Lingyu thought angrily, she really is still imprisoned here. However, the feeling just now was too short, and the feeling was rather vague. After Xiao Lingyu arrived at the garden, he could only be sure that Anya was nearby. However, he did not know where Anya was imprisoned. Even though Xiao Lingyu used his consciousness to observe every corner of this scene, his soul realm was not high enough. He could not find any clues. They already know that I'm here. They will definitely move Anya away or bring harm to Anya. In his anxiety, Xiao Lingyu did not care so much anymore. He immediately attacked repeatedly, randomly bombarding everything in the garden. The experts of the Heaven's Incense School naturally quickly surrounded him. However, they were blocked outside by nearly 2,000 armored puppets. These armored puppets were expressionless. As long as they saw someone approaching, they would immediately shoot out divine light to attack. Those with cultivation below the Emperor realm could not get close at all. Even if an Emperor realm expert wanted to force their way into the garden, they would have to pay a heavy price. The entire garden was in ruins, but Xiaolingyu still hadn't discovered anything. At that moment, the middle-aged female cultivator, who was a late-stage Emperor-level cultivator, charged in. She asked coldly, "Sir, for you to possess such skills, you must be quite a figure in the immortal realm. Why did you barge into my Heaven's Incense School and wreak havoc?" Without distinguishing between right and wrong, Xiaolingyu's face was ashen. He flew in front of the other party without fear and said, "Just now, I clearly sense the existence of the person I'm looking for. She was detained nearby by you. You still have the face to say that I didn't distinguish between right and wrong?" Seeing that Xiaolingyu didn't seem to be joking or lying, the female Celestial Emperor's expression changed. However, she still firmly said, "Your Excellency must have sensed wrongly. If Your Excellency leaves now, I can ask Celestial Sovereign Lan Yao to not pursue Your Excellency's actions." "Forget it. It's not like I haven't seen Immortal Blue Jade before. She can't do anything to me," Xiaolingyu disdainfully replied before saying, "I advise you to hand her over. Otherwise, even if Immortal Blue Jade is here, your Heaven's Incense School won't be able to live in peace." The middle-aged female Immortal Emperor knew that he was not boasting. The close to 2,000 puppets around the garden could easily raise the Heaven's Incense School to the ground. Immortal Blue Jade was indeed not here. Even if the Heaven's Incense School could force this person and the puppets out, they would suffer great losses. The middle-aged female Immortal Emperor pondered for a moment before saying, "Tell these puppets to stop attacking first. I'll go out and ask." Xiaolingyu could not find where Anya was. Since she had decided to go out and ask, he naturally would not stop her. With a thought, the puppets remained motionless. Not long after, the middle-aged female Immortal Emperor brought a younger-looking fellow disciple over. The young female Immortal Emperor walked to a corner of the garden and chanted a few words. A cave entrance appeared. "She's in here." Xiaolingyu discovered that he had sensed Anya's presence and rushed into the cave first. "Mei Ling is too presumptuous. Let's see how she's going to deal with this." The middle-aged female Immortal Emperor's face was filled with anger as she followed Xiaolingyu into the cave. The cave was not very long. At the end, there were a few tightly shut secret rooms. Xiaolingyu arrived in front of one of the secret rooms and slammed open the stone door. Chapter 4:17. "Stop!" Xiaolingyu shouted, but she didn't dare to rush forward. Judging from the current situation, she could definitely take Anya's life in an instant. After all, Anya had just ascended for less than 10,000 years. It was impossible for her to be like Xiaolingyu, who didn't fear an immortal emperor. It could even be said that in front of an immortal emperor, Anya was as weak as a baby. "I advise you to calm down. Otherwise, she will immediately turn into ashes in front of you." Mei Ling sneered. At this time, the middle-aged female Immortal Emperor also arrived at the door of the secret room. She said with an ugly expression, "Junior Sister Mei Ling, what are you doing?" "Senior Sister Dan Rong, what I am doing is beneficial to our Heaven's Incense School," Mei Ling said calmly. "I think you are asking for trouble." The middle-aged Dan Rong was so angry that her body trembled. She had already seen Xiaolingyu's strength. "Senior Sister Dan Rong, are you going to stand on the side of an outsider?" Mei Ling asked. "I will only stand on the side of the Heaven's Incense School's rules," Dan Rong said angrily. "Senior Sister Dan Rong, shut up. Quickly let her go." Dan Rong refused to explain. "Senior Sister Dan Rong, you are also a smart person. Can't you see the current situation? Even if I let her go, do you think this person will let it go?" Mei Ling shook her head and said, "I only know that if you let her go, there is still room for improvement. Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with." Dan Rong was still calm. Senior Sister Danrong, I know that you are cautious, but don't be too timid. After all, our Heaven's Incense School is a top sect in the immortal world. Moreover, we have a celestial sovereign. What do we have to fear? Mei Ling said very confidently. Damn it. If celestial sovereign Lan Yao was here, wouldn't it be easier? Danrong cursed in her heart. Then, she said with a cold face, if Master was here, I am afraid she would personally end your life. I advise you not to be stubborn. Senior Sister Danrong, don't scare me. Since I dared to do this, there must be a reason why Master won't be angry. In fact, the reason why I did this was because Master told me to. Mei Ling had a fearless look on her face. What? Danrong's expression, and said, Master is a dignified celestial sovereign, a top expert of the 3 realms. How could she teach you to do this? Mei Ling smiled and said, Senior Apprentice Sister, you have a stubborn personality. That's why Master put you in charge of the sect's internal discipline. There are some things that Master won't tell you. Just because you don't know doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Ha! Xiaoling Yu suddenly laughed. When Mei Ling's attention was diverted to him because of the laughter, a cold light shot out from his body. By the time Mei Ling noticed the cold light, it was already right in front of her. Her reaction wasn't slow. Almost in the next moment, a handkerchief-shaped magic treasure blocked in front of her. However, the cold light easily penetrated the handkerchief and hit her left shoulder. It carried her body forward until it hit the wall of the secret room and stopped. At this moment, Xiaoling Yu was already standing in front of Anya. Mei Ling first spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, she looked at her left shoulder and saw a scimitar that was as thin as a cicada's wing and almost transparent. The scimitar was launched without any warning and seemed to be invisible. Mei Ling did not expect her supreme-grade immortal handkerchief to be so easily broken, so she was easily hit. The transparent scimitar had been completely refined by Xiaoling Yu with the purple-black chaotic true fire. It was more powerful in Xiaoling Yu's hands than in Great Thief Nie Yu's. When it was launched by the original body, there was no aura fluctuation at all. It was the best way to launch a sneak attack. Mei Ling was like most bandits. Even though she had a hostage in hand, once she encountered a threat, the first thing she thought of was to save her own life, not to kill the hostage. Xiaoling Yu suddenly launched a sneak attack just now because he was betting that Mei Ling would not kill Anya in a flash, but would protect herself first. Of course, he also heard that Danrong's persuasion was useless, so he decided to take the gamble. Anya's situation was very bad. Even though Mei Ling's palm had left her sweaty forehead, her eyes were still closed and her body collapsed on Xiaoling Yu's back. She has been hit by the soul transfer seal. Without Senior Immortal Lan Yao's help, you can't save her. Although Mei Ling was nailed to the wall by the scimitar, she still smiled. Xiaoling Yu's face became even gloomier. He immediately poured his mind into Anya's body. Anya's body basically did not suffer any damage, but her immortal nascent soul was a little withered. The unforgiving divine sword that Xiaoling Yu gave her in the cultivation world quietly flew around Anya's pink and cute immortal nascent soul. When his mind entered Anya's sea of consciousness again, Xiaoling Yu found that Anya's soul was currently shrouded in a misty fog. His mind could not penetrate the fog and could not detect the situation of Anya's soul. That fog should be the soul transfer seal that Mei Ling mentioned. It was a seal technique similar to a curse technique. Xiaoling Yu did not know much about the soul transfer seal, but he knew that it was definitely not good for Anya. He said to Danrong, "Is it true that only Senior Immortal Lan Yao can remove this soul transfer seal?" Danrong's expression was very complicated. The soul transfer seal is our sect's secret technique. I have never practiced it, but I know that the soul transfer seal used by an immortal emperor can only be removed by an immortal venerable expert. Moreover, that immortal venerable must understand the seal technique of the cultivator who used the soul transfer seal. This soul transfer seal was used by junior martial sister Mei Ling. In the entire immortal realm, only Master can remove it. Humph! The anger in Xiaolingyu's heart burned uncontrollably. With a thought, the scimitar suddenly moved horizontally, cutting Mei Ling's body into two along her chest. Then, a ball of purple-black chaotic truefire flew out and turned the two halves of Mei Ling's body into ashes. Please return to Senior Immortal Lan Yao. If she is injured in any way before she returns, I want your entire Heaven's Incense School to be buried with her, Xiaolingyu said in a gloomy voice. Senior Martial Sister Mei Ling is already dead. I'm afraid that Master already knows. She should be back soon. Please wait patiently. Once Master returns, she will definitely remove the soul transfer seal for her, Dan Rong said helplessly. Xiaolingyu did not say anything. She carried Anya out of the secret room and out of the cave, but she did not leave the Heaven's Incense School. In the ruins of the Heaven's Incense School, Xiaolingyu sat cross-legged and held Anya's body in her arms. She quietly combed her hair and tidied her clothes. Her face was filled with tenderness and worry. The nearly 2,000 armored puppets were like loyal and brave guards. They surrounded Xiaolingyu in the center, not allowing any Heaven's Incense School cultivators to come close. The Heaven's Incense School disciples were all in danger. No one dared to come close. Everyone was very worried and secretly prayed that Senior Immortal Lan Yao would return quickly. Ever since the Heaven's Incense School became a top sect in the immortal world, no one had dared to be so presumptuous in the Heaven's Incense School's territory. Moreover, the Heaven's Incense School could not do anything to her. The Heaven's Incense School disciples, who were originally proud of being a disciple of the Heaven's Incense School, now felt a deep sense of defeat. However, everyone believed that as long as Senior Immortal Lan Yao returned, all problems would be solved. There had been a lot of major events in the immortal world recently. First, the entrance to the Divine Tomb had appeared on the Divine Tomb continent. Then, the wondrous Pill School, which had controlled the Piao Xiang continent for countless years, had perished. These two events had caused the immortal world, which had been peaceful for many years, to gradually become lively. Now, the Heaven's Incense School's territory, where the top expert of the immortal world, Fairy Lan Yao, resided, had a male cultivator. No one dared to move, which surprised the cultivators of the immortal world. Paper could not wrap fire. Xiaolingyu had been in the Heaven's Incense School's territory for less than 2 years when the news quickly spread in the immortal world. Fairy Lan Yao only returned to the Heaven's Incense School after 200 years. Before she saw Xiaolingyu, she first saw the 2,000 armored puppets. Her originally angry expression became even more unsightly because she recognized these armored puppets. Fairy Lan Yao's appearance was very good, and she was also very playful. Although she had cultivated for countless years, there was still a hint of childishness on her face. She was the dream lover of many experts in the immortal world. However, at this moment, her face was frosty and her beautiful eyes, which were as narrow as blades, were staring at Xiaolingyu. Flying into the air, Fairy Lan Yao said to Xiaolingyu, "It's really searching high and low only to find it without any effort. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me." Xiaolingyu didn't get up. He was still sitting cross-legged with Anya in his arms. He said coldly, "Let's not talk about the past. I only want to ask you, Fairy, why did you use the soul transfer seal on my wife? Do you want to remove the soul-shifting seal?" Fairy Lan Yao sneered arrogantly and said, "Don't think that just because you have some ability, you can be presumptuous in front of a senior immortal. Everyone below the senior immortal is an ant. You are just a slightly stronger ant. Do I need to explain anything to an ant? If that's the case, then I'll let Fairy see the means of an ant." Xiaolingyu put Anya into his divine palace. At the same time, he commanded all the armored puppets to attack with divine light. Fairy Blue Jade's strong words made it clear that she would not easily compromise with Xiaolingyu. Xiaolingyu was even more unlikely to give up and leave. Even if he could not beat a senior immortal, When a real man encountered such a situation, even if he lost his life, why not fight? Countless divine lights soared into the sky like thousands of arrows. Even Fairy Lan Yao had to be careful when dealing with them. In the divine tomb, Fairy Lan Yao had seen the power of these divine light attack. However, there were only 2,000 armored puppets here. Fairy Blue Jade didn't dodge. She waited for the divine light to get close before gently waving her sleeve. A colorful silk circled around her body and blocked all of the divine light. However, her body was blown back several thousand feet. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu had already disappeared into nothingness. He quickly pounced towards Fairy Lan Yao. Your divine clothes are divine, but they are useless against me. Chapter 4:18. It really is useless against a celestial sovereign's divine sense. Xiao Lingyu sighed inwardly. Fortunately, he didn't expect the invisibility divine robe to be able to fool a celestial sovereign's divine sense. Before the colorful silk wrapped around him, he had already dodged. Since the invisibility divine robe was useless, Xiao Lingyu didn't waste his time and energy maintaining the invisibility divine robe. He immediately revealed himself. Fairy Lan Yao wasn't too surprised that her attack didn't hit. However, when she was about to attack again, the 2,000 armored puppets shot countless beams of divine light at her. Fairy Lan Yao used the colorful silk to block, but her body was unavoidably sent flying far away. Although the attacks of the 2,000 armored puppets could restrain Fairy Lan Yao, they couldn't cause her any harm. Leave behind your divine abode and these armored puppets, and I can overlook your impudent actions in the Heaven's Incense School. I can also remove the soul-shifting seal on your wife. After Fairy Blue Jade stabilized herself, she generously suggested. A celestial sovereign is actually like this. You've really opened my eyes. Xiao Lingyu angrily cursed in response. Then, his body was wrapped in purple-black primal chaos true fire. He fearlessly charged forward again. In the face of such a huge gap in cultivation, your special techniques are useless. Fairy Blue Jade laughed in disdain. Then, countless strands of colorful silk flew over from all directions. Xiao Lingyu only saw a blur before he was surrounded by the colorful silk. He couldn't dodge at all. The colorful silk was a divine tool that Fairy Lan Yao often used. Although it was afraid of being burned by the primal chaos true fire, it could still trap Xiao Lingyu for a while, preventing Xiao Lingyu from moving. After Fairy Lan Yao easily blocked another wave of divine light from the armored puppets, a long needle with divine light whistled out. This was Fairy Lan Yao's world-piercing needle. The divine world-piercing needle pierced through the layers of colorful silk, then pierced through the primordial flame and Xiao Lingyu's chest. With just one blow, Xiao Lingyu was already severely injured. Although he was not very afraid of the Celestial Prime, it was impossible for him to kill the Celestial Prime. Moreover, if he had not chosen to escape from the beginning, it was very likely that he would have been injured by the Celestial Prime. Xiao Lingyu calmed down after the world-piercing divine needle pierced through his chest. He used the purplish-black primordial flame of chaos to force the colorful silk back. Then, he waited for the armored puppets to release another round of divine light before he put himself and the armored puppets into his spiritual abode. Before Fairy Blue Jade stabilized herself, the divine dwelling had already sped up. In a flash, it disappeared from the Heaven's Incense School. The speed of the divine dwellings is much faster than before. Just as Fairy Blue Jade was about to chase, she was surprised to find that the divine palace had already flown out of the range of her divine sense. The speed of the divine dwellings was indeed much faster than before because Xiao Lingyu had almost completely refined the divine dwellings. After the quality of the primordial flame of chaos had greatly increased, he could refine any magic treasure much faster. First, Xiao Lingyu quickly flew to the teleportation plaza of the Myriad Flower City. Then, he teleported there without waiting in line. Before he teleported, He did not forget to send a message to the person in charge of the Myriad Flower City's investigation department. After teleporting several times, he stopped at a continent called the Pinglong continent and entered the city of Pinglong. Not long after, the person in charge of the investigation department of the Myriad Flower City arrived at Pinglong and brought Xiao Lingyu to the investigation department of the Pinglong city. Xiao Lingyu's physical injuries were not very serious, but he still needed some time to fully recover. However, he was not in a hurry to recover. Instead, he said to the two people in charge of the investigation department, "Help me contact Elder Qi and ask him to come here. The sooner the better." When Elder Qi arrived at the Pinglong continent, 500 years had already passed. Fortunately, the fog only enveloped Anya's soul. Anya was still unconscious, but she did not lose her life. Xiao Lingyu naturally guarded Anya. He paid close attention to Anya at all times, afraid that she would be in danger. "Brother Xiao, what are you going to do?" Elder Qi had clearly heard about Anya's situation. After arriving, he knew that Xiao Lingyu was anxious, so he did not beat around the bush. "Elder Qi, you can't remove the soul-shifting seal, right?" Xiao Lingyu asked with some hope. Elder Qi shook his head and said, "The soul-shifting seal of the Heaven's Incense School is very powerful and special. If it was cast by a cultivator below the Emperor level, I can remove it. However, if it was cast by an Emperor-level expert of the Heaven's Incense School, only Fairy Lan Yao can remove it." "Elder Qi, I agree to your previous suggestion," Xiao Lingyu said as calmly as possible. Elder Qi's eyes lit up when he heard this. He said, "Brother Xiao can mobilize all the descendants of Earth in the immortal world, including my old bones." Xiao Lingyu nodded and said, "If we attack the Heaven's Incense School, how confident are we in winning?" Elder Qi said confidently, "It will be difficult to hurt Fairy Lan Yao, but it will be easy to flatten the Heaven's Incense School." However, after thinking about it, Elder Qi said, "It's easy to defeat the Heaven's Incense School. With me restraining Fairy Lan Yao, the rest of the people from the Heaven's Incense School are nothing to be afraid of. They don't have much experience in battle, so their combat strength can't be that strong. However, the Heaven's Incense School is a top sect in the immortal world. Not to mention their deep roots, they also have deep relationships with many other large sections. Not to mention others, Hu Yunzi of the Heavenly Tao sect has a good relationship with Fairy Lan Yao. Elder Qi means that we can't attack by force?" Xiao Lingyu asked with a frown. Elder Qi shook his head and said, "It's not that we can't, but we need to prepare. Moreover, we need to act quickly. We can't give them too much time to react. Once they delay us, we will most likely suffer heavy losses. Don't you think it's inappropriate to mobilize so many people for my matter?" Xiao Lingyu probed again. You should think about this carefully. If you want to fight, we'll fight," Elder Qi said with a relaxed smile. "Today, everyone charged for me. In the future, I will shed my blood for everyone," Xiao Lingyu said generously. "Actually, when I came, I already notified everyone. At most, in 1,000 years, at least half of the emperors will be here. When that time comes, we can take action. We can't gather all of our forces here in such a short period of time," Elder Qi said. "I'm afraid she can't wait 1,000 years," Xiao Lingyu said worriedly. "With me here, you can rest assured. Although I can't remove the soul transfer seal, I can still control it," Elder Qi comforted. With this, Xiao Lingyu was relieved. While waiting for the Earth's descendants to arrive, Xiao Lingyu left Anya in Elder Qi's care. He continued to refine the armored puppets. The Earth's descendants were very secretive. Their actions were also very secretive. Even if something big was about to happen, there wouldn't be too much of a disturbance. Her opponent had escaped. In order to prevent her opponent from coming back, Fairy Lan Yao naturally had to continue guarding the Heaven's Incense School. She didn't know that Xiao Lingyu was an Earth's descendant. Otherwise, her choice might have changed. 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. Fairy Lan Yao, who was in seclusion in a secret room, suddenly had a change in expression. Then, her figure disappeared. In the next moment, Fairy Lan Yao appeared at the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School. At this moment, there were more than 2,500 armored puppets standing in a neat row at the entrance. The divine light shining from their bodies condensed into a thin aura that made one's heart palpitate. Xiaolingyu stood above these armored puppets and looked coldly at the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School. Perhaps it was because Xiaolingyu had charged into the Heaven's Incense School too easily last time. Ever since he was forced to escape, the Heaven's Incense School had sealed the entrance and activated the sect protection formation. Fairy Lan Yao had been frightened earlier because Xiaolingyu had attacked the Heaven's Incense School's formation. Fairy Lan Yao narrowed her eyes and said, "You dare to come again?" Xiaolingyu replied, "If you agree to remove the soul-shifting seal for my wife and apologize for it, I can stop." Fairy Lan Yao replied in the same tone, "If you leave behind these armored puppets and the divine palace, I will remove the soul-shifting seal for your wife. Then your Heaven's Incense School will disappear from the immortal world like the wondrous Pill School." With that, Xiaolingyu took out his divine palace. With a thought, all the Earth's descendant experts he had stored in his divine palace appeared in front of the Heaven's Incense School. After so many years of recuperation, the injuries that the world-piercing divine needle had caused to Xiaolingyu had naturally healed. He was now in peak condition. Fairy Lan Yao's heart skipped a beat when she saw nearly 200 Emperor-level experts appear in front of her entrance. However, she then smiled and said, "No matter how many immortal emperors there are, they can't do anything to a celestial prime. Don't even think about breaking this sect protection formation. I advise you to quickly retreat. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you all." The Heaven's Incense School isn't the only place with celestial primes. Elder Qi slowly flew over from afar. His voice reverberated in everyone's ears. "I was wondering who could invite so many immortal emperor experts at once. It turns out that it's you, the remnants of Earth," Fairy Lan Yao said coldly. At this time, the childishness on her face was gone, replaced by a solemn expression. Elder Qi transmitted his voice to Xiaolingyu. "Things might change if you delay. You can attack now." "Kill!" Xiaolingyu shouted. The aura around his body continued to rise. The purple-black primal chaos fire had already wrapped around him. Roar! More than 2,500 armored puppets responded. Divine light filled the sky and blasted toward the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School. The nearly 200 immortal emperors in the air also attacked at the same time. Streaks of light formed from immortal talismans and immortal treasures shot toward the entrance of the Heaven's Incense School. When Fairy Lan Yao saw this, she first used colored silk to block the divine light of the armored puppets. Then, she returned to the base. "All disciples of the Heaven's Incense School, listen to my orders. A strong enemy has invaded. Everyone, prepare to fight." Chapter 419. Fairy Bluejade was very clear about the power of the Heaven's Incense School's sect-protecting formation. It wouldn't be able to last long against such a lineup, especially when there were immortal sovereigns among them. Immortal sovereigns possess divine power and could unleash the full power of divine artifacts. Fairy Bluejade couldn't allow the immortal sovereigns to attack so recklessly. Therefore, after reminding the Heaven's Incense School disciples to prepare for battle, Fairy Bluejade charged out again. She first sent a message, and then went to find Elder Qi. A female cultivator in the Myriad Flower City looked at her communication bead and her expression changed greatly. She then entered the teleportation formation and left the Myriad Flower continent. As Fairy Bluejade and Elder Qi fought, they left the Heaven's Incense School's base. No one knew where they went to fight. If the two immortal sovereigns fought in the air not far from the ground of the Myriad Flower continent wouldn't be able to withstand it. If the two immortal sovereigns fought with all their might, it wouldn't be a problem for them to destroy a continent in the immortal realm. Elder Qi didn't want his fight with Fairy Bluejade to affect Xiao Lingyu and the other Earth descendants' attacks on the Heaven's Incense School. Fairy Bluejade also didn't want to affect the sect protecting formation's defense, nor did she want to affect the Heaven's Incense School disciples. Therefore, the two tacitly agreed to fight in the sky above the Myriad Flower Continent. The battlefield of immortal sovereigns was usually in the sky of the immortal realm because it could be destroyed at will. The Heaven's Incense School's base wasn't in chaos. Dan Rong and the other immortal emperors gathered together to maintain the sect-protecting formation. The immortal monarch disciples gathered the Heaven's Incense School's elite disciples to prepare for battle. The sect-protecting formation bought the Heaven's Incense School disciples time to prepare, but it couldn't protect them forever. Fairy Bluejade had already sent people to ask for reinforcements. Whether or not reinforcements could arrive in time depended on how long the sect-protecting formation could last. As one of the top sects in the immortal world, the Heaven Incense School was even more powerful than the Nanhua Immortal School. Not only did the Heaven Incense School have an immortal venerable, they also had twice as many immortal emperors as the Nanhua Immortal School. They should be able to hold on for a while with the sect-protecting Grand Array. Close to 200 immortal emperors of Earth's descendants, in addition to more than 2,500 armored puppets that could release divine light attacks, they were constantly bombarding at the same time. Moreover, they were not restrained at all. Their attacks were definitely not to be underestimated. It was definitely not a problem for them to break this formation. However, before they came, they were clear that they had to break this formation as soon as possible. Therefore, their attacks were exceptionally powerful. The protective formation of the Heaven's Incense School was extremely wondrous as well. It did not seem to be damaged at all, but as long as an attack arrived, countless colorful petals would appear out of nowhere, blocking everything that came their way. Moreover, it did not seem to be damaged at all. Xiao Lingyu did not remain idle either. As he used his mind to control the armored puppets to attack, he also used his chaotic primordial fire to transform into a purplish-black fire dragon to attack the Heaven's Incense School's protective array. Such a huge commotion at the Heaven's Incense School naturally alarmed all the cultivators on the Myriad Flower Continent. However, many cultivators only glanced from afar before retreating. Many cultivators felt that something big was about to happen on the Myriad Flower Continent, so they all left. It was obvious that someone dared to attack the Heaven's Incense School. The attacker was not an ordinary force, so no one dared to rashly approach the battlefield. When Xiao Lingyu killed Mei Ling, Fairy Bluejade herself took more than 200 years to get back. The reinforcements she could ask for would definitely take at least twice as long to get here. Without the 2,000 armored puppets and Xiao Lingyu's purplish-black primal chaos truefire, it would be very difficult for the 200 immortal emperors to break through the sect-protecting formation. However, there were no ifs in reality. Under the bombardment of the Earth-descendant powerhouses and the armored puppets, the Heaven's Incense School's protective array only lasted for less than 50 years before it was broken. When the array collapsed, the Heaven's Incense School's Emperor-level powerhouses who maintained the entire array spat out blood, their faces as pale as paper. The immortal emperors of the Heaven's Incense School had more or less suffered some internal injuries. The Earth-descendant powerhouses had been attacking continuously for so many years, so they had naturally expended a lot of energy. However, Xiao Lingyu's armored puppets were different. Xiao Lingyu had stored many godstones in their bodies to provide them with energy. They were almost always in peak condition. Moreover, these armored puppets had extremely strong defenses. As long as they were not attacked by divine weapons, there would not be any problems. They were also fierce and fearless. When they charged together, the Heaven's Incense School powerhouses who had lost the protection of the formation and were prepared to fight were all terrified. More than 2,500 armored puppets charged into the Heaven's Incense School first. Xiao Lingyu led nearly 200 Earth-descendant powerhouses and followed closely behind. The Heaven's Incense School's resistance was like a thin piece of paper that could be broken with a poke. After all, female cultivators were still female. They were naturally inferior to male cultivators when it came to fighting. Furthermore, the Heaven's Incense School had not fought against any force, big or small, for many years. In the beginning, the immortal emperors were able to maintain order. However, when the immortal emperors could not even take care of themselves, the entire Heaven's Incense School was in chaos. The Earth-descendant powerhouses were different. They were scattered all over the immortal realm and often had to carry out missions. Almost all of them had been through hundreds of battles. Their battle awareness and techniques far surpassed these female cultivators, who were usually chattering. Moreover, the Earth-descendant powerhouses had been bullied by the various forces of the immortal realm for many years. It was rare for them to have a chance to vent their anger. Moreover, it was such a large-scale operation. Naturally, they were all fighting with all their might, even if the opponent was a seemingly weak woman. Fairy Lan Yao knew that the Heaven's Incense School's disciples were not strong enough. That was why she had sent people to ask for reinforcements. However, before the reinforcements had arrived and the sect's protective formation had been broken, she finally realized the severity of the problem. When Fairy Lan Yao sensed that the immortal emperors of the Heaven's Incense School's immortal emperor's soul jade tablets had shattered in her storage ring, she stopped fighting with Elder Qi and said, "Stop. I agree to remove the soul-shifting seal on that woman." Elder Qi smiled and then flew down, telling Xiao Lingyu and the other Earth descendants to stop attacking. Fairy Lan Yao also flew down. When she saw that the originally beautiful base had been reduced to ruins and the Heaven's Incense School's disciples' faces filled with fear and embarrassment, her captivating red lips couldn't help but twitch. Just for one person, you made such a big fuss. Was it worth it? Even if you won, you still lost a dozen or so immortal emperors, Fairy Lan Yao said with a cold smile. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu discovered that although they won, it was just as Fairy Lan Yao said. A dozen or so immortal emperors from Earth had died in battle. However, in a battle of this scale, it was impossible to not have any losses. After Xiao Lingyu calmed down, she still felt a bit guilty. This is not just for one person but also for our pride. We will use our own strength to tell a large sect like your Heaven's Incense School that sometimes you have to be careful. It's war, so how can there be no sacrifices? Elder Qi replied with a smile. Humph. You have displayed your strength, but this will also alert the various powers of the immortal realm. I want to see how you will deal with this in the future, Fairy Lan Yao said with a cold snort. Today, we can defeat your Heaven's Incense School. In the future, we will definitely be able to defeat other powerful enemies. In ancient times, our ancestors from Earth were able to sweep through the world. Now, our descendants from Earth also have the courage to be enemies with the world. Xiao Lingyu replied with an indifferent tone. Let's not talk nonsense. Invite her out. I will remove the soul-shifting seal for her. Fairy Lan Yao didn't have the mood to continue arguing. With a thought, the unconscious Anya appeared in Xiao Lingyu's arms. Xiao Lingyu carried Anya and took a few steps forward, arriving in front of Fairy Lan Yao. The current situation didn't allow Fairy Lan Yao to continue being tough. If she didn't back down, she would be the only one left from the Heaven's Incense School. Fairy Lan Yao didn't do much. She only swept her sleeve across Anya's head, and the fog surrounding Anya's soul disappeared. Okay, you should go, Fairy Lan Yao said with a wave of her sleeve. She looked very tired. Xiao Lingyu invited Anya back into the god's abode and said, if you had agreed to remove the soul-shifting seal before the battle, we would have retreated. However, we have suffered such great losses. Fairy, do you think this is over? Fairy Lan Yao knew that the other party wouldn't let this go. After all, the other party had won. The defeated party would never be able to negotiate. If they continued to fight, Fairy Lan Yao might be fine, but the other disciples of the Heaven's Incense School would definitely be slaughtered. Thus, she said very rationally, "What other conditions do you have? We don't ask for immortal stones or divine stones. We also don't ask for immortal treasures or divine artifacts. We only ask that you, Fairy Lan Yao, apologize for this matter." With that, Xiao Yu pointed around and said, "In front of these fellow immortals who are watching from afar." Fairy Lan Yao was more willing to accept conditions such as immortal stones or divine stones, but she had no other choice. Thus, after pondering for a long time, she nodded. Fairy Lan Yao's apology spread for tens of thousands of kilometers. Many of the braver spectators heard it clearly. These spectators were all extremely shocked. To be able to force Fairy Lan Yao to this point, they could naturally tell who had won. Mei Ling, who had pursued the culprit, had already been killed. Because of this, the Heaven's Incense School had also suffered great losses. Not only had their base been reduced to ruins, but they had also lost nearly 40 immortal emperors. In addition, Fairy Lan Yao's apology made the Heaven's Incense School lose all face. Xiao Yu and Elder Qi felt that this was enough. There was no need to continue fighting. After all, no matter how they fought, Fairy Lan Yao would be fine. However, the descendants of Earth would definitely suffer more casualties. Thus, after Fairy Lan Yao apologized, the descendants of Earth disappeared with the 2,000 armored puppets. Xiao Yu and Elder Qi, on the other hand, calmly flew away under the fearful gazes of countless Heaven Incense School disciples and the shock of countless spectating cultivators. After this battle, Xiao Yu used the powerful support of the descendants of Earth to force Fairy Lan Yao to remove the soul transfer seal on Anya. Although he succeeded, he was also completely tied to the descendants of Earth. Chapter 420. Anya gradually woke up after the soul transfer seal was removed. Anya felt her eyes sting when she saw the person she missed day and night looking at her with tenderness and concern. However, she was stubborn and didn't shed any tears. Instead, she silently threw herself into Xiao Yu's arms, feeling the warmth that she was no longer familiar with but always missed. After hugging for a while, Anya began to talk about her life after Xiao Yu's ascension. Shantian Academy did well in the cultivation world with countless students. Its reputation and influence grew day by day. Shantian Academy's cultivation ideology was also recognized by many cultivators in the cultivation world. Anya didn't ascend to the immortal world until 1300 years after Xiao Yu ascended to the devil world. She had been cultivating alone on the Wanhua continent and rarely came out. Anya had the merciless divine sword. She knew that she was in trouble because of her wealth, so she didn't dare to show her face in public. Moreover, she was a sword cultivator and didn't need many immortal stones to cultivate. However, Anya later found that she still needed to know more about the immortal world and its cultivation methods so that she could seek opportunities and breakthroughs. Cultivating behind closed doors was a taboo for cultivators. Therefore, cultivators would travel outside whenever they encountered a bottleneck or just made a major breakthrough. When Anya was traveling, the Heaven Incense School happened to be recruiting new disciples. She went to take the test. With Anya's aptitude, she should have been able to pass the Heaven's Incense School's test without a hitch. However, Anya didn't expect that it was because of her great aptitude that the examiner had invited Mei Ling over. As an immortal emperor expert, Mei Ling was naturally able to see through Anya and had evil thoughts about her. Mei Ling pretended to make things difficult for Anya, which made Anya, who was always proud and respected by millions of people in the cultivation world, very angry. Therefore, Anya talked back to Mei Ling, which gave Mei Ling an excuse to imprison Anya. After being imprisoned for a few months, Mei Ling came to the secret room and said that she wanted Anya to cooperate with her to activate a secret technique to transfer Anya's excellent talent to her. Once the transfer was successful, Mei Ling would have the exceptional aptitude of Anya. Moreover, she would be in the Immortal Emperor stage. This way, Mei Ling would become an extremely powerful immortal emperor stage sword cultivator. Actually, this kind of thing happened in the Heaven Incense School and many other large sects of the immortal world. However, this method was too vicious, so the large sects of the immortal world didn't dare to use it openly. It was already very difficult for immortal emperors to advance to immortal venerables. Moreover, the divine tribulation was so difficult to pass. It was no wonder that many experts in the immortal world would think of some secret techniques to change their innate talent. They would use some unorthodox methods to allow themselves to go further on the path of cultivation. This kind of secret technique was known to all the big shots of the various sects and clans. In fact, they all tacitly approved of it. That was why Mei Ling dared to be so confident in front of Dan Rome. However, this kind of secret technique mostly required the cooperation of the passive party in order to maximize its effectiveness. Therefore, when Anya refused, Mei Ling could only imprison her and wait for her to despair. Generally speaking, when ordinary cultivators were imprisoned like this, they would be able to withstand it at the beginning. However, when there was no hope, they would give in. After all, this kind of secret technique wouldn't take the victim's life. It would only make the victim's aptitude become very ordinary. When Anya signed up for the test, she said that she didn't belong to any sect or clan and had just ascended. Mei Ling never thought that this matter would become so difficult to resolve. This was the general situation. Xiao Lingyu was originally very angry. However, when he saw that Anya was only a little frightened and wasn't injured at all, and that he had taught the Heaven Incense School a lesson, his anger subsided. Anya was trapped in the cell. She had thought that Xiao Lingyu would come to save her, but she didn't have much hope. After all, Xiao Lingyu had just ascended. How could he deal with a top sect like the Heaven Incense School? Moreover, how did he know about her situation? Anya even suspected that Xiao Lingyu had come to the immortal realm from the demon realm. Even so, Anya wouldn't despair, let alone give in, even if she died. However, Anya was able to persevere because of the merciless sword. It was because Mei Ling discovered that Anya had the merciless sword that she wanted to keep Anya's consciousness. Otherwise, Mei Ling wouldn't be able to refine the merciless sword. As for the soul transfer seal, Xiao Lingyu and Anya didn't know much about it. However, after Xiao Lingyu came looking for her, Mei Ling had no choice but to take a step back and settle for the second best. It's all in the past. In the future, no one will let you suffer anymore. After listening to Anya, Xiao Lingyu hugged Anya even tighter and spoke gently but firmly. You should protect me. However, Anya, have never liked being protected since I was young. It's the same in the cultivation world and the immortal realm. I also want to become stronger. I believe I can do it. Anya shook her head and spoke confidently. At this time, there was no one else in the divine abode. After leaving the myriad flower continent, the powerhouses of the earth descendants all left. Elder Qi also said a few words and left a heavy token for Xiao Lingyu before leaving. Now that the strength and traces of the Earth descendants had been exposed, Elder Qi and the powerhouses of the Earth descendants had to prepare well. This time, they had made a move against the top sects of the immortal realm. In the future, they would also counterattack. At the very least, Fairy Lan Yao wouldn't give up so easily. After leaving the myriad flower continent, Xiao Lingyu also invited Anya out of the divine abode. The two of them weren't in a hurry to go anywhere. Whenever they came across a continent in the immortal realm, they would stop and travel for a while. For many years, Xiao Lingyu hadn't relaxed. This time, he could accompany Anya, who wasn't very familiar with the immortal realm, to relax. The reason Xiao Lingyu came to the immortal realm was to find Anya. Now that this most important task had been completed, he felt much more relaxed. However, while one burden had been taken off, another even heavier burden had been placed on his shoulders. Perhaps it was because he had experienced a lot over the years, so Xiao Lingyu was more familiar with his realm. Or perhaps it was because this relaxation allowed him to open up his mind. In short, after traveling for a while, Xiao Lingyu's cultivation naturally reached the peak of the late stage of the monarch realm. He could already begin to break through the next great realm of the 9-revolution chaos formula, which was the 5th revolution, the Chaos Divinity Transformation stage. The Chaos Divinity Transformation stage was a transition from the middle level to the upper level of the Chaos Divinity Transformation stage. The strength of an early Chaos Divinity Transformation stage cultivator was still within the scope of the immortal, devil, and monster realms. However, an intermediate Chaos Divinity Transformation stage cultivator was already at the God realm. At the late Chaos Divinity Transformation stage, cultivator would gradually face the test of the Chaos Divinity Tribulation. If they could successfully pass it, they could ascend to the God realm. In theory, an early Chaos Divinity Transformation stage cultivator's strength was about the same as an Immortal Emperor stage cultivator's strength, and an intermediate Chaos Divinity Transformation stage cultivator's strength was comparable to an Immortal Prime. However, at the late Chaos Divinity Transformation stage, cultivator's realm was one level higher than an Immortal Prime. Therefore, if one did not consider magic treasures, a late Chaos Divinity Transformation stage cultivator was almost invincible in the 3 realms. However, Xiao Lingyu could not be said in theory. Before he reached the early Chaos Divinity Transformation stage, he already had strength comparable to an Immortal Emperor. Once he successfully reached the early Chaos Divinity Transformation stage, with his various means, he would definitely be able to fight an Immortal Prime like Blue Jade Fairy. He would not be defeated so easily like last time when he fought with Blue Jade Fairy. Now, because of Anya's matter, Xiao Lingyu had exposed the strength of the descendants of Earth. The descendants of Earth would definitely be in a difficult situation for a period of time. If Xiao Lingyu reached the early Chaos Divinity Transformation stage, then the descendants of Earth would have 2 Immortal Primes, and they would have a stronger self-defense force. After traveling for nearly 1,000 years, Anya no longer had the interest to continue traveling. Xiao Lingyu brought her to the East Imperial Continent. After returning to the East Imperial Continent, Xiao Lingyu did not have any scruples and directly brought Anya back to the Nanhua Immortal Sect. After all, when he joined the Nanhua Immortal Sect, he had sworn that as long as the Nanhua Immortal Sect did not let Xiao Lingyu down, he would still be a disciple of the Nanhua Immortal Sect. First of all, this identity did not have any negative impact on him. Second of all, with his current strength, it was very unlikely that the Nanhua Immortal Sect would let him down. Therefore, he did not have to leave. After returning for less than 2 hours, Qing Xian came to the door. Senior sister is here. Little brother has something to ask of senior sister. Xiao Lingyu smiled and welcomed her. Qing Xian was a little annoyed that Xiao Lingyu left without saying goodbye. Therefore, she snorted coldly. However, her expression became very gentle as she looked at Anya and said, "This must be sister-in-law, right? Little sister Anya. Greetings, senior sister." Anya immediately bowed. "Sister-in-law, you don't have to be so polite. Junior brother Xiao and I have always been good friends. Sister-in-law, you and I are also family," Qing Xian said politely. However, her words were thought-provoking. Anya was not stupid. After hearing Qing Xian's words, she secretly glanced at Xiao Lingyu. However, she did not find any strange expression on Xiao Lingyu's face. Qing Xian did not need to be greeted. She sat down and ignored Xiao Lingyu. Instead, she looked at Anya and said curiously, "Sister-in-law's aura is very familiar to me. If I'm not wrong, sister-in-law, you should also be practicing the way of the sword." Anya nodded and replied, "My realm is not high. Senior sister, please teach me more in the future." Qing Xian said modestly, "I'm just a dabbler in the way of the sword. I've only done a little research. I can't compare to a pure way of the sword like sister-in-law. Moreover, in the cultivation of the way of the sword, one's current realm is not important. What's important is talent. Sister-in-law's talent and aptitude are both better than mine. We can communicate more in the future. Xiao Yu stood at the side with a helpless expression. He did not know how to interrupt. Qing Xian acted as if she was the host. She invited Anya to sit down and said, "Sister-in-law, you're very lucky. Junior brother Xiao crossed over from the demon realm and killed his way into the Heaven's Incense School alone for you. If anyone is willing to do this for me, their death will be worth it." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.